Chapter 365. The strange behavior of the Assistant Minister of Justice caused the atmosphere in the hall to explode. What is Assistant Minister Zhou saying? He's guilty? What crime did he commit? This can't be. Good heavens! Does he want to die? In the imperial court, some people quickly realized something and looked at Zhou Zhong with astonished eyes, their faces full of shock. There were very few fools in the imperial court. In the blink of an eye, countless people had guessed Zhou Zhong's motive. Where the officials from the Ministry of Personnel were, the expressions of the three people changed. Zhou Chuan's expression also changed. Chen Jian's face was pale as he thought to himself, "Impossible, impossible, he will die if he does this." At this moment, Zhou Zhong, who was kneeling on the ground, spoke again. Zhou Zhong spoke in a deep voice. 14 years ago, I was bewitched by Chen Jian, the imperial physician of the Ministry of Personnel, Gao Hong, and the right assistant minister of the Ministry of Personnel, Xiao Yun, to frame the left assistant minister of the Ministry of Personnel, Li Yi, for treason. Chen Jian could not allow him to continue. He strode forward and said loudly, "Zhou Zhong, what are you talking about? Do you know what the punishment is for framing an official of the imperial court?" Zhou Zhong said indifferently, "So you also know that framing an official of the imperial court is a serious crime." He raised his head and said, "Everything I said is true. I am willing to accept the soul search." A rank 4 official was willing to accept the soul search. This was enough to prove that what he said was true. Zhou Zhong's words caused the imperial court to fall silent for a moment. Then, it became noisy again. Since he wants to confess, why did he wait until today? You can't tell. Before today, who would have thought that the imperial court would reopen this case? But why did he do this? Back then, he framed Li Yi, but today, he confessed. Zhou Zhong didn't make a difference to what happened back then. Even without him, Li Yi's ending wouldn't have changed. In my opinion, he wanted to use this opportunity to gain the trust of the old party and enter the inner circle of the old party. It was all for today's betrayal. 14 years. He was so patient and loyal to the old party for 14 years. Just to commit a crime for his brother? King Shou looked at Zhou Zhong and sighed. He actually endured for 14 years. This Zhou Zhong is truly a man. Realizing the current situation, he covered his mouth and coughed lightly. He gritted his teeth and said, "This person is really sinister." Li Mu, who was standing in the crowd, was also shocked. Zhou Zhong's actions were completely out of his expectations. He recalled what Zhou Zhong had said to him in front of the ancestral temple yesterday, and seemed to have understood something. It turned out that he had already made his decision at that time. Li Mu thought that Zhou Zhong was someone who would give up everything for his political ideals. He would commit crimes for Li Yi, Li Qing's life and death, or even his own life and death, compared to some of his ideals, were not worth mentioning. However, Zhou Zhong's actions today overturned Li Mu's understanding of him. Behind the curtain, the Empress's voice could be heard. "Arrest Zhou Zhong and all the people involved in this case. Bring them to the Imperial Clan Temple and have them interrogate by the 3 provinces." Although Li Yi's case was not investigated, once something was found, no one would be able to cover it up in front of everyone. During the morning assembly, 2 ministers and 3 assistant ministers were arrested. Other than that, there were also some people involved in the case who were not in the assembly. The internal guards were immediately ordered to arrest them. No one would have thought that this matter would have such a huge turn of events. Those people who framed Li Yi all those years ago thought that victory was in their hands, but they didn't expect that there would be a spy among them. From the beginning to the end, Zhou Zhong was not on the same side as them. He had endured for 14 years, waiting for this day. His counterattack caught both the old and new parties off guard. Although 14 years had passed since they framed a rank 4 imperial court official and caused extremely serious consequences, each and every one of them would not be able to escape death according to the law. In the Imperial Clan Temple, a few of them had their powers sealed and were sent to prison to await trial by the 3 provinces. This case involved a lot of people and no department had the ability to investigate it alone. Li Mu walked into the most luxurious prison. Li Qing woke up from her meditation and asked softly, "What happened outside? Why is it so noisy?" Li Mu opened his mouth but didn't know what to say for a moment. After organizing his words, he said slowly, "Just now in the assembly, Zhou Zhong admitted in front of His Majesty and hundreds of officials that he was involved in framing your father. Now, the Minister of Personnel, the Minister of Works, and the left and right assistant ministers of personnel have all been arrested. Li Qing said anxiously. He did not frame father. He did all this for their dreams. One day, he could reverse the verdict for father. Li Mu nodded and said, I know. You don't have to worry. I will report this matter to His Majesty. Although this is not enough to pardon him, he should be able to avoid death. Although Zhou Zhong's actions were pardonable, he could not be completely forgiven by the law just because he was pardonable. After all, he was still considered one of the main culprits back then. Seeing that he had voluntarily confessed to the crime and confessed to being an accomplice, according to the law, he could be spared. Of course, no matter what, after this incident, he could no longer be an official. After a while, Li Mu walked out of Li Qing's prison and came to another place. Zhou Zhong was imprisoned here. He was imprisoned separately from the others. Li Mu stood outside the prison and said, I thought you would not stand up. Zhou Zhong looked at him and said, If you could really find out anything, why would I stand up? Li Mu shook his head and said, This is not your style. If you want to achieve your dreams, you have to protect yourself. This is what you taught me. Zhou Zhong was silent for a moment and said slowly, But this may be his only chance. If he misses it, there will be no chance for him to regain his innocence. 14 years had passed since Li Yi's case. If the case was closed a second time, it would be impossible to overturn the case in the future. Li Mu looked at him and asked, So you gave up on your dreams? Zhou Zhong's gaze was deep as he said calmly, The flame of dreams will never be extinguished. As long as the flame is still there, the flame will be passed on forever. In another prison cell, with the assistant minister of the Ministry of Personnel as the leader, the few of them had ugly expressions. Not long after, the door of the prison cell was opened and 3 more people were pushed in. Chen Jian's face was pale as he said, Marquis Zhongyong, Count Pingon, Marquis Yongding. You have all been captured too? The 3 of them were shocked when they saw the few people in the prison cell. After realizing something they said in shock, Could it be? Chen Jian gritted his teeth and said, That damned Zhou Zhong betrayed all of us. After understanding the whole story, the 3 of them had completely gloomy expressions. The assistant minister of the Ministry of Personnel, Gao Hong, sighed and said, If Zhou Zhong's soul is searched and he reveals what happened back then, the few of us will probably be sentenced to death. Chen Jian said, We are all grasshoppers on the same rope. We must think of a way, or else it will be difficult for us to escape death. The Marquis Zhongyong shook his head and said, Death is impossible. My family still has a death exemption medallion bestowed by the late emperor. As long as I don't rebel, no one can punish me. The Count Pingon also sighed. It's a pity that the medallion passed down by my father is gone. I originally wanted to pass it down from generation to generation. The Marquis Yongding had a pained expression as he said, My family's medallion probably can't be kept. That damned Zhou Zhong, if it wasn't for his bewitchment back then, the 3 of us wouldn't have participated in this matter. Chen Jian said in shock, All of you have death exemption medallions. The Marquis Yongding nodded and then looked at the 3 people opposite him and said, Not only us, the late emperor also bestowed one to the Duke of Nanyang. Although Assistant Minister Gao didn't have one, concubine Gao should also have one. She would not save her brother. The Minister of Personnel glanced at Zhou Chuan who was in the corner and said indifferently, The Zhou family's 2 death exemption medallions have already been used last time. I wonder if the Empress will spare Minister Zhou. Zhou Chuan looked at him and said indifferently, Unfortunately, father-in-law gave that medallion to my wife before he passed away. Chen Jian looked at the people around him in a daze and felt that he didn't fit in with them. Out of the 7 people standing here, only he didn't have a death exemption medallion? The Minister of Personnel saw his worry and said, Don't worry, the late emperor bestowed 13 medallions and we have already used 12 of them. If I remember correctly, the last medallion should be in the hands of Prince Shou. Hearing Prince Shou's name, Chen Jian heaved a sigh of relief and immediately said to the jailer outside the door, Quickly go and report that I want to see Prince Shou. Not long later, Prince Shou walked over slowly. Chen Jian grabbed the bars of the cell and said hurriedly, Prince Shou, you must save me. A moment later, after hearing his words, Prince Shou smiled and said, What kind of relationship do we have? Everyone is doing this for the Xiao family. Isn't it just a medallion? I will give it to you. Chen Jian heaved a sigh of relief and said, Thank you, Your Highness. Prince Shou touched his waist with one hand and his expression suddenly changed. He said in shock, Where is my medallion? Where did my big medallion go? Chapter 366. Prince Shou touched his body and said regretfully, I seem to have lost my token. Chen Jian grabbed the bars of the cell and said with a trembling voice, Prince Shou, please don't scare me. This concerns my life. Prince Shou thought for a while and said, well, I'll go back and look for it. It shouldn't be lost. You wait here and I'll tell you when I find it. Seeing Prince Shou leave quickly, Chen Jian leaned against the wall weakly. He looked at the other people in the cell talking and laughing. The atmosphere was very lively. But the lively atmosphere was theirs, and he had nothing. Although they were in the same cell, they were not the same. At the same time, in another cell, Zhou Zhong said slowly, back then, he and I offended the interests of the upper class and strongly opposed the death exemption token issued by the late emperor. The courtiers and the emperor could not tolerate us. He was framed for treason. Although there was not enough evidence, what they needed was just a reason. Before he died, he entrusted Qing'er to me and asked me to protect myself first and then slowly complete our great cause. For our great cause, we can give up everything, Li Mu asked. This is the reason why you gave up on her. Zhou Zhong nodded and said, at least before you moved to Fulu School, I had no other choice. This was the reason why Li Mu had been guarding against Zhou Zhong. This kind of person had a firm goal and was extremely rational. In their eyes, family and friends were not as important as their great cause. They could sacrifice themselves at any time. Li Mu admired his patience and ambition, but he would not get too close to this kind of person. He looked at Zhou Zhong and asked, you made a choice in the end. Zhou Zhong looked at Li Mu and said, this is not a choice. I believe that if I didn't finish it, someone will do it for me and do it better. Li Mu said, don't look at me like that. Zhou Zhong continued, back then, the late emperor gave out 13 gold medallions. He tried his best to abolish it, but he incurred the displeasure of the late emperor and died because of it. All these years, 3 of the 13 gold medallions have been used up. Including the old concubine's gold medallion and the Zhou family's gold medallion, there are 7 left. Among these 7 medallions, 6 will be used up this time. The last one is in the hands of Prince Shou. These things shouldn't have existed from the beginning to the end. In the future, we will probably never see them again. Having said this, he leaned against the wall and sat down. He closed his eyes and said, you can go. I'm already very tired. The prison of the Imperial Clan Temple is a good place to sleep. As soon as he finished speaking, his breathing calmed down and he actually fell asleep. Li Mu slowly walked out of the prison. In the courtyard of the Imperial Clan Temple, Prince Shou and Zhang Chun were playing dice under the shade of a tree. King Shou's gambling luck had always been bad. In front of Zhang Chun, there was already a pile of silver fragments. After losing another round, King Shou searched his chest and sleeves. Finally, he couldn't find a single piece of silver. Zhang Chun kept the silver fragments and said, why don't we stop here today and wait for the next round when you have enough money? King Shou slammed a piece of gold on the table and said, who are you looking down on? Let's continue. I'm going to win back all the money I lost last time. Zhang Chun looked at the piece of gold and said in surprise, this piece of gold, why does it look so familiar? Li Mu looked at it from afar and also felt that it looked familiar. This piece of gold was squarish. Other than the fact that there were no words on it, it looked like it was carved from the same mold as the death exemption medallion. King Shou glanced at Li Mu from afar and asked, little Li, are you coming? 15 minutes later, Li Mu carried the gold and left the Imperial Clan Temple. He planned to melt this thing when he returned. This thing wasn't light and should be enough to make a few pieces of jewelry. He would give 1 to Lu Hanyan, 1 to Li Qing, and 2 to Wan Wan and Xiao Bai. If there was any left, he could give it to the Empress. At this moment, the entire Shindu was in an uproar because of something. Today, Li Yi's case, which affected the hearts of countless people, had a shocking turn of events. The first person to suggest reinvestigating the case was Li Mu from the Central Secretariat. He felt that it was unfair for Li Yi back then and wanted to reverse the case for him, but he was rejected by the Imperial Court. After that, people from the Fulu School in the Northern County came and forced the Imperial Court to pay attention to this case. On the surface, the case was reinvestigated because of the Fulu School. However, the officials living in the northern courtyard saw the head of the Fulu School entering and leaving the Li residence on the day of Li Mu's wedding. It was obvious who was behind this matter. The commoners did not know what happened after that, but they roughly knew that the Imperial Court did not find out anything about the old case. There were also voices of opposition in the Imperial Court. If there were no accidents, this matter would be left unsettled in the end. However, no one had expected that the case would take such a huge turn. Zhou Zhong, the assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice, who was a core member of the old party and had made many contributions to the old party over the past decade, admitted in front of all the officials and His Majesty that he had conspired with the old party to frame Li Yi back then. He had single-handedly sent the masterminds of the old case to the Zongjing Temple. Among these people were 2 ministers of the 6 ministries and 2 assistant ministers. This was the case that had the greatest impact on the court in all these years and involved the widest range of people. And this was only the mastermind. If the accomplices were included, who knew how many people in the court would be implicated? However, why did Zhou Zhong do this became a mystery in the hearts of the people. Did Zhou Zhong lose his mind? Not only did he court death, but he also pulled in his accomplices. I don't understand, I really don't understand. That's right, what do you think he's after? Did something go wrong in his cultivation and he was invaded by his inner demons, causing him to go crazy? In my opinion, it might be because of the unequal distribution of benefits that caused internal strife. In the entire divine capital, everyone in the streets, taverns, and tea-houses were discussing this matter. No matter how they thought about it, they could not imagine that the people who framed Li Yi back then were not found by the imperial court. Instead, they were wiped out because of internal strife. As for why Zhou Zhong did this, there were different opinions. Some said that he was invaded by his inner demons, some said that he had lost his mind, and some said that the old party had internal strife. In a restaurant somewhere, an old man could not listen anymore. He slammed his wine bowl on the table and said in a deep voice, "Did you forget that more than 10 years ago, other than Li Qingtian, there was also Zhou Qingtian in the divine capital?" "What Li Qingtian? Zhou Qingtian?" 14 years ago I was only 5 years old. I was still playing with P. I didn't know anything." "Old man, what are you talking about?" The young people in the restaurant were confused. A few of them who were over 30 years old seemed to have thought of something, and a look of realization appeared on their faces. More than 10 years ago, when the late emperor was still on the throne, it was the darkest period of the divine capital in their memories. At that time, the rich and powerful only needed to pay a fine to kill someone. At that time, it was not uncommon for the rich and powerful to kidnap women on the streets. At that time, the officials of the Great Zhou were corrupt, and governance was chaotic. The people suffered greatly. The people of the divine capital would rather take a detour than walk past the government. Even during those dark times, there was still light in the divine capital. At that time, the assistant minister of the Ministry of Personnel, Li Yi, punished the corrupt officials and brought justice to the officials of the divine capital. The director of the Ministry of Justice, Zhou Zhong, redressed the grievances of the people. The 2 of them persuaded the late emperor to abolish the Silver Penalty Act and stopped him from giving out the gold medallion. At that time, they were one of the few rays of light in the hearts of the people of the divine capital. They were known as Qingtian. However, this situation did not last for long. Later, the assistant minister of the Ministry of Personnel, Li Yi, was accused of treason, and his entire family was killed. At that time, the people of the divine capital could not accept this result. Assistant Minister Li was righteous and loved the people like his own children. How could he be a treacherous official? What made it even more difficult for the people to accept was that the director of the Ministry of Justice, Zhou Zhong, was one of the officials who accused him. They used to admire Zhou Zhong, but later on, they hated him as much. After Assistant Minister Li's death, Zhou Zhong quickly sided with the old party and became their lackey. A few years later, he was promoted to the position of Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice. Over the years, he protected many people from the old party and helped the old party fight against dissidents and the new party. Soon, he became the core of the old party. For more than 10 years, the people who were grateful to Li Yi would spit at the Ministry of Justice when they passed by to vent their hatred. However, no one expected that more than 10 years later, Zhou Zhong would stand up for Li Yi in the imperial court without hesitation and reverse the verdict. Someone finally recalled and said in disbelief, "Could it be that Lord Zhou has been enduring humiliation for the past 14 years just for this day?" That's right, that's right. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. Why would he give up the power he already had? Could it be that we've been wrong about Lord Zhou all these years? Lord Li and Lord Zhou are brothers of different surnames. Back then, Lord Zhou must have known that he couldn't save Lord Li, so he went undercover in the old party and gained their trust. He waited for the right time to reverse the verdict for Lord Li and give those people a fatal blow. 14 years. He was scolded by us for 14 whole years. How much has he been wronged all these years? The truth of what happened back then had been revealed. Many people were filled with regret, and their respect for Zhou Zhong was even greater than before. Li Mu's residence. When Li Mu used the true samadhi fire to burn the gold cake, he realized that it was only coated with a layer of gold powder on the surface. The inside was black and looked like iron but not iron. He did not know what it was. Li Mu then threw it into the flask heaven dimension. Prince Shou actually used a gold-plated fake to trick him. He had to be more careful when gambling with him in the future. At the same time, in the Imperial Clan Temple, Prince Shou sighed and walked to the front of the prison cell. He looked at Chen Jian apologetically and said, "Assistant Minister Chen, I'm really sorry. I've searched everywhere for that death exemption golden medallion but couldn't find it. It should have really been lost. Don't worry. Every year on your death anniversary, I'll get people to burn more paper money for you." Chapter 367. Of course, the material used to make the death exemption golden medallion was not ordinary metal. Li Mu had asked Hyun Jinko about it. According to Hyun Jinko, the metal in his hand was a piece of meteoric metal. In the cultivation world, meteoric metal was called meteoric metal. It was a metal that did not exist in the 10 continents. It was extremely tough and was most suitable for refining weapons. It was one of the main materials for refining heaven-grade magic treasures. Therefore, Li Mu found a new box and put it away. It might be useful in the future. Then, he began to think about something. Although Zhou Zhong's suicide attack was useful, according to the law, he himself could not escape the death penalty. Of course, Li Mu could not watch him die. After thinking about it, he left the house and walked toward the palace. At the same time, in the southern courtyard, it was a mansion with more than 10 entrances. Several figures gathered together. They did not look happy. "I've told you that Zhou Zhong is a traitor. We can't trust him easily. Now, not only have we lost control of the Ministry of Justice, but we've also given away the entire Ministry of Personnel. What's the point of saying all this now? Who knew that Zhou Zhong would be so cunning? He seemed to listen to us on the surface, but he always had evil intentions. He destroyed all our years of hard work. Preposterous. I can't take this lying down." The people present were all members of the Shao royal family. They were all furious that Zhou Zhong had betrayed them. At this moment, one of them looked at King Shou and asked, "Fourth brother, don't you still have a death exemption golden medallion? Give it to Chen Jian. He has been loyal to us for many years. Even if he didn't make any contributions, he still worked hard." King Shou spread his hands and said, "I lost that death exemption golden medallion." "What? You lost it? Where did you lose it? You actually lost such an important thing? What else can you do?" King Shou shrugged and said helplessly, "I can swear to the heavens that the death exemption golden medallion is no longer in my hands. Perhaps this is his fate." "You really lost it? You really lost it? Have you searched for it?" "I tried using an object-seeking talisman, but I couldn't find it." "Look at you, other than drinking tea, listening to operas, and gambling with dice. What else can you do? How did our Shao clan end up with you? Sigh, forget it. Whether Chen Jian dies or not, I don't care. But Zhou Zhong must die. If he doesn't die, he will forever be a disgrace to our Shao clan. Anyone can survive, but Zhou Zhong must die. Send this letter to the Zhou family. They should know what to do. Didn't he want to overthrow Li Yi? I would like to see who will save him this time." In the Changle Palace, Li Mu prepared the dishes for the Empress. He also poured fresh and fragrant tribute tea into a jade cup and placed it beside her hand. Zhou said, "There are no outsiders here. You can sit down too." Li Mu said, "I'll just stand. If your Majesty has any orders, please call me." Zhou glanced at him and asked, "Why are you so good to me today?" Li Mu asked, "Did I not treat your Majesty well in the past?" Zhou was speechless for a moment, then said, "That's not what I meant." Then she said softly, "Sit down. I don't want to eat alone." Li Mu sat opposite her and accompanied her to eat for a while. At a certain moment, he raised his head and asked, "Your Majesty, how do you plan to deal with Zhou Zhong?" Zhou said, "According to the law, he should be beheaded." Li Mu quickly said, "But he turned himself in and confessed all his accomplices. It can be considered meritorious." Shouldn't he be given a light sentence? Zhou Yi took a memorial from the side and handed it to him, saying, "This is the memorial that the secretariat just handed over. Take a look." Li Mu opened the memorial. From the signature, it was handed over by an official of the new party. In this report, there was a detailed list of cases where Zhou Zhong had covered up for the officials of the old party over the years. A single case was not a big deal, but when all of them were put together, it was enough to convict him of the felony of bending the law for personal gain. This crime could be heavy or light. If it was light, it could be a forfeit of salary. If it was heavy, it could be beheaded. In the past 10 years, in order to gain the trust of the old party, Zhou Zhong used the power in his hands to cover up many officials of the old party. He also violated the law and did many things that were beneficial to the old party. They were all listed in this memorial. Perhaps only the old party itself could understand these things in such detail. It seemed that Zhou Zhong's behavior of harming himself and hurting the enemy had thoroughly angered the people behind the old party. The old and new parties joined forces to put him to death. In order to execute Zhou Zhong, the old party even exposed some of their own scandals and sacrificed some people. The purpose was to make Zhou Zhong's death irreversible. Zhou Yi picked up a piece of tofu and slowly ate it before saying, "These crimes added together are enough for him to die twice." Li Mu picked up his chopsticks and put them down, saying, "I think that although Zhou Zhong violated the law in the past, there is a reason behind it that cannot be ignored. His good friend was wronged and died tragically. He had no way to seek justice through the imperial court and the late emperor. How desperate was that? In order to redress his good friend's case, he violated morality and endured humiliation until today. He is praised and respected by the people. If the imperial court does not care about the reason and sentences him to death, I'm afraid that people will not be convinced." Zhou Yi glanced at him and asked, "So, you are here to plead for him?" Li Mu looked at her eagerly. "Your Majesty," Zhou Yi said helplessly. All right, I promise you." Li Mu's appetite suddenly improved. If he had known that acting coquettishly could settle this matter, he would not have thought of so many reasons. Perhaps this was what it meant to be fearless when one was favored. For this favor, Li Mu was willing to be her intimate cotton jacket for the rest of his life. Zhou Yi added, "I can only save his life. In the future, he will no longer be the assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice and will need to stay away from Luoyang." Li Mu said, "As long as you can keep him alive, that is enough." After serving the empress, Li Mu walked out of Changle Palace and let out a long sigh of relief. Li Mu had already reached the limit of what he could do by not executing Zhou Zhong directly. It was also considered an explanation to Li Qing. If he made any further requests, it would be difficult for the empress. Of course, she was the empress. Her words were the law. It was not impossible for her to pardon Zhou Zhong and Li Qing directly. However, Li Mu still hoped that the imperial court would maintain order. He would not let the empress walk down the same path as the previous emperor. Imperial Secretariat. The head of the Imperial Secretariat, the head of the Imperial Secretariat, the head of the Ministry of Justice, and the servants gathered to judge Zhou Zhong. In fact, there was nothing much to try in this case. The soul-searching technique was not difficult for the presiding judges. With Zhou Zhong's active cooperation, the details of the case were revealed at a glance. Li Yi's crime of treason was purely a false accusation. Among them, the officials of the Ministry of Personnel, Zhou Chuan, the Marquis of Zhongyong, the Duke of Ping'an, and the Marquis of Yongding were the masterminds of the case. According to the law, they should be executed. However, among these 7 people, 6 of them had a gold medallion. A gold medallion bestowed by the previous emperor could exempt them from all crimes except for rebellion. They would be stripped of their official and noble positions, but they could keep their lives. Even so, this was a huge blow to the imperial court. Out of the 6 ministers, 2 of them were executed in this case alone. None of the 3 main officials of the Ministry of Personnel were left. Just filling up the vacant positions was a huge headache for the 3 provinces. However, the outcome was already decided. If the case was not investigated, then so be it. No matter how much injustice Li Yi had suffered, as long as the imperial court did not investigate, there would be nothing. As long as the imperial court did not investigate, the ministers of the Ministry of Personnel were still ministers, and the assistant ministers were still assistant ministers. They were still important officials and pillars of the imperial court. However, since the imperial court had investigated, no matter what the outcome was, they had to accept it. The other 6 were already prepared. After the 3 provinces made their verdicts, the 6 gold medallions were placed on the table of the Imperial Secretariat. Only the left assistant minister of the Ministry of Personnel, Chen Jian, sat on the floor and muttered, "I'm so stupid. I only knew that I was with you to frame Li Yi, but I didn't know that all of you had gold medallions except for me. I regret it, I really regret it." After sentencing the masterminds, the left assistant minister asked, "How should we deal with Zhou Zhong?" The right assistant minister said, "Based on the crimes he has committed over the years, he should be executed." The left assistant minister looked at Zhou Jing and asked, "What do you think, Lord Zhou?" Zhou Jing said, "I am deeply ashamed that my younger brother framed a loyal official. I will leave the following matters to the 3 of you." With that, he slowly walked out of the Imperial Secretariat. The head of the Imperial Secretariat shook his head and said, "I am also a little tired. You 2 can do as you see fit." With that, he also left with his hands behind his back. The left and right assistants looked at each other and exchanged glances. Zhou Zhong had single-handedly turned the imperial court into a mess. After this incident, both the new and old parties hoped that Zhou Zhong would disappear forever. His disappearance would be a good thing for the imperial court. The left assistant minister cleared his throat and said, "If that's the case then..." At this moment, Mr. May walked in from outside and said, "His Majesty has decreed that the assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice, Zhou Zhong, try to redress his friend's innocence. Although it is pardonable, it is not pardonable by law. From today onwards, he is stripped of his position as assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice and will be banished to the army." The 2 assistants looked at each other again and bowed at the same time. "Yes, Your Majesty." Although banishment to the army was lighter than the death penalty, it was still more severe than exile. Moreover, the place of banishment was near the borders of the demon nation or the netherworld. It was desolate and dangerous. Even if the banished person did not die under the blade of the executioner, he would die under the hands of the demon ghosts. The difference was that the latter way of dying was to protect the great Zhou. It was more heroic than the former way of dying. Criminals who were banished to the army were usually used as cannon fodder. Even if they were at the 5th realm, they would not survive. This ending should be enough to satisfy those people. At the Imperial Clan Temple. "You are not righteous. You will not die a good death. You will not die a good death." When Chen Jian was escorted into the Imperial Clan Temple's prison again, he could not help but roar with grief and indignation. Zhang Chun sat under the shade of a tree and shook his head. "If you knew this would happen, why did you do it in the first place?" King Shou sighed and said, "The heavenly Tao is clear. There will always be people who have to pay the price for their past mistakes. Although the imperial court is big, it cannot tolerate animals." Zhang Chun looked at King Shou in surprise. He said in surprise, "I can't believe you would say something like that, Your Highness." King Shou waved his hand and said, "This is something I learned from the opera. It's based on my feelings. It's not targeted at anyone. Come, let's continue. Today, I will win back all that I lost in the past." Chapter 368. Due to Assistant Minister Zhou Zhong's public confession, the left Assistant Minister Li Yi of the Ministry of Personnel, who was framed for treason 14 years ago, was finally vindicated today. A rank 4 official of the imperial court was exterminated because of false accusations. This was a great insult to the imperial court and the great Zhou. Although His Majesty had issued a decree to declare Lord Li's innocence, what had happened could never be undone. Outside the imperial city, the commoners were filled with righteous indignation when they saw the notice posted on the city wall. The culprits from back then could have been pardoned with the death exemption medallion. Why was Lord Zhou banished? Lord Li was loyal to the emperor and his country. In the end, the lives of his family were worth less than a few broken medallions? The reality is even more absurd than the dramas. How sad, how sad. Have you seen the new drama, Zhao's Orphan? It's clearly about Lord Li. Not yet. Hearing you say that, I'll have to go and take a look. In a mansion in the southern courtyard, the Duke of Nanyang, who had been pardoned with the death exemption medallion but lost his position as the Minister of Personnel, frowned deeply and said in a gloomy voice, "Zhou Zhong is only banished. These crimes are enough for him to die twice. His Majesty is obviously siding with him." A person beside him said, "Forget it. It's just a matter of time." How many of the criminals who have been banished have been able to live for more than half a year? The Duke of Nanyang said indignantly, "I can't take this lying down. It took me more than 10 years to climb to this position. Because of Zhou Zhong, I have nothing now. I can't wait to kill him." That person was silent for a moment before saying, "Even if you want to kill him, you can't do it now. Once he leaves the capital, no one will care if he's dead or alive. Right now, there's another important matter." The Duke of Nanyang asked, "What is it?" The person said, "Have you forgotten that Li Yi's daughter is still imprisoned in the imperial clan temple?" After being reminded by him, Commander Prince Nanyang recalled that this matter had started because Li Yi's daughter had assassinated 5 imperial court officials to avenge her father. This had triggered the old case. However, in recent days, his attention had been focused on the old case and he had completely forgotten about this matter. That person continued, "During this period of time, that Li Mu went in and out of the Zongjing temple many times. He would visit this woman almost every day. It seems that they knew each other before. The reason he wanted to reverse the verdict for Li Yi was probably because of this woman." Royal Prince Nanyang narrowed his eyes and said, "These are 2 completely different cases. I would like to see how Li Mu will save her, unless he can convince His Majesty to grant him a death exemption medallion." The person next to him had a playful smile on his face as he said, "A large part of the reason for Li Yi's death was because he opposed the death exemption golden medallion. If he used the death exemption golden medallion to save that woman, then it would be the biggest joke. If he didn't use the death exemption golden medallion, then the woman would be dead. What choice would he make?" Royal Prince Nanyang asked, "What if he really begs His Majesty to grant him the death exemption golden medallion?" Bewitching the Son of Heaven, treacherous officials who will harm the country. Murderous intent appeared in that person's eyes as he said, "Clean up the Emperor's subordinates and punish treacherous officials." Northern County. Countless people gathered under the city walls and looked at the notice posted on the city walls. They were pointing and discussing. Most of the commoners were illiterate and only came to join in the fun. They did not know what was going on. Someone scratched his head and asked, "Is there anyone who is illiterate? Help me take a look. What is written on this notice?" "Let me take a look." A middle-aged scholar squeezed into the crowd. After looking at the notice, he said, "It says that more than 10 years ago, there was a high-ranking official who served the country and the people in the divine capital. Because he offended the nobles, he was framed for treason and his entire family was executed. A few days ago, the imperial court cleared his name." The northern county was far away from the divine capital. The commoners did not know what happened in the divine capital, nor did they know the high-ranking officials in the divine capital. However, someone was confused and said, "Why does this sound like the play that the Yunyan Pavilion put on a few days ago?" The middle-aged scholar sighed and said, "This play was actually written for him. This Lord Li used to be a good official who was loved by the commoners. In the divine capital, he was called Li Qing Tian by the commoners. Unfortunately, he always worked for the commoners and went against the nobles. After offending the nobles, he was framed and his entire family was exterminated. He was wronged for more than 10 years. If not for his daughter avenging her father by killing the officials who framed him back then and alerting the imperial court, no one would have cleared his name." There's actually such a thing? It's even more dramatic than a play. Even I want to watch that play. Unfortunately, I don't have the money. Who did not like to listen to plays? However, to the commoners, being able to eat and wear was already a luxury. Wouldn't it be better to spend a few coins to buy steamed rice? Spending money to listen to plays was the life of the rich. At this moment, someone asked, "Don't you know that the Yunyan Pavilion is not paying for the plays these days?" Someone was shocked. There's such a good thing? It's not just the Yunyan Pavilion. In the past few days, there's also a stage set up by the official road outside the city. It's free to perform. Those who have the money can attend it. Those who don't have the money can also attend it. So the stage at the city gate is for watching plays. If they said that it's free, I would have gone to watch it. Let's go together. Wait for me. The commoners did not have much entertainment, so they were naturally happy to watch a play that they could watch for free. The Yunyan Pavilion's theater was filled to the brim. The area around the stage outside the city was also filled with commoners. It was the slack period, so there were not many opportunities like this. The commoners in the surrounding area carried stools before the sun rose. The play was called The Orphan of the Zhao Family. It told the story of an official of the Zhao family from the previous dynasty. Because he often sought justice for the commoners, he offended the nobles in the capital. He was framed by a treacherous official and his family was exterminated. The surviving orphan of the Zhao family endured for many years to avenge his family. The story of the play was twisted and bizarre, with climax after climax. At the end, the orphan of the Zhao family killed the treacherous official with his own hands to avenge his father. It was so satisfying that the commoners could not help but think of Do Yi's injustice. The commoners loved to watch plots where good had good karma and evil had evil retribution. This was not the only reason why the play was so popular. It was also because the content of the play was not fabricated. Instead, it was based on the original. The official of the Zhao family in the play was Li Yi, the assistant minister of the Ministry of Personnel, whose entire family was exterminated because of the crime of treason. The empress had already informed the 36 counties of the Great Zhou of his injustice. Most of the commoners knew about it. Sigh, he's already dead. What's the use of redressing the injustice? Why can those people still use the death exemption golden medallion to save their lives? They should all be buried with that lord. It's a pity that the imperial court is controlled by those people. That lord's daughter had no way to redress the injustice. She was forced to take revenge on those corrupt officials. I wonder how the imperial court will deal with her? What else can they do? They'll definitely give her the death penalty. After all, she violated the law. Bullshasterisk the law. Is the law used to protect the murderer? The law can't give justice to others, but it doesn't allow them to seek justice for themselves. Why can those people continue to enjoy glory, splendor, and wealth after framing others and destroying their families? Why can't even leave behind the last bloodline of those who were wrongfully killed? What kind of bullshasterisk justice is this? The imperial court announced this to the world and let the commoners of the 36 counties know about this matter. They originally wanted to give justice to Li Yi. Unexpectedly, after the commoners learned about the inside story, they became even angrier. The official who was framed for treason was redressed, but what about those who harmed him back then? They were still alive and well and continued to be people above others. However, that lord's only descendant was going to be executed. What was the point of such redressing? The so-called law was only used to restrain the commoners. Those nobles could treat the law as nothing. With a token they could avoid the death penalty. In their eyes, the commoners were no different from livestock that could be killed at will. Under such anger, someone finally could not help but say, if that lord's bloodline is cut off, there will really be no justice. Why don't we protest the imperial court with blood and protect that lord's bloodline? As soon as this was said, it immediately received the response of many people below the stage. I agree. Count me in. My family sells cloth. I'll pay for the cloth used for the bloodletter. I'll go back and ask the village chief to mobilize the entire village. In just a short day, there was a bloodletter movement in the North County. The angry commoners ran around and tens of thousands of commoners pressed their fingerprints on the white cloth. Regarding this, the North County government watched from the sidelines. At the same time, in Yantai County, a few commoners walked out of the theater and discussed among themselves. So County Officer Yu is the prototype of the villain in the play. He really deserves to die. To think that I felt sad for him. He framed a good person in exchange for a promotion. Too hateful. I heard that someone outside the city wrote a bloodletter to protest the imperial court. I'm going. Do you want to come? Let's go. Yushan County. So this is the reason why the two lords died. The case back then has been investigated. Even if they didn't die, they would be beheaded by the imperial court. They deserved it. Danyang County. Nanyang County. Yuntai County. In just a few days, similar things happened in the 36 counties of the Great Zhou. After the local government learned of the inside story, to prevent civil unrest, they ordered the commoners to stop gathering. However, the letter was secretly passed down from village to village, Shindu. After the case was revealed, the punishment for the people involved in the case back then was quickly implemented. Other than a few main culprits, the officials who joined forces to impeach Li Yi back then were just following the trend. Now, they were only fined their salaries and were not punished too much. Just by punishing a few main culprits, there was already a huge loophole in the 6 ministries. The 3 provinces were also in a mess. If the accomplices were to be held accountable one by one, the imperial court would probably completely collapse. The left assistant minister of the Ministry of Personnel, Chen Jian, had already been executed. As for the others, because they had the death exemption token, No one could do anything to them. In the hall of the secretariat, Li Mu opened a letter. The contents of the letter were about an official urging the imperial court to quickly deal with the assassination of the 5 officials. Chapter 369. In fact, all the things that had happened in the divine capital these days revolved around the murder of several imperial court officials. The reason why few people mentioned this matter was that most people were attracted by Li Yi's old case. Now that the old case had been clarified, those who should be rehabilitated had been rehabilitated, and those who should be sentenced had been sentenced. The original case had been pushed to the forefront again. The headmaster had notified almost all the subsects to help Li Mu obtain the book of 10,000 people from the various counties. Based on the feedback from Mount Baiyun, the progress of this matter had been pushed forward by more than half. Now was not the time. Li Mu closed the memorial and put it aside. In the Commandery Prince Mansion of Nanyang, Commandery Prince Nanyang looked at an official and asked, "Are you sure the memorial has been handed in? It has been 3 days. Why is there no news at all?" The official scratched his head with a puzzled look and said, "It has been handed in. I personally handed it in. Is it still going through the process?" "The Central Secretariat is going through the process. Why would it take so long?" Commandery Prince Nanyang looked at Xiao Ziyu and said, "Ziyu, you are the head of the Central Secretariat. Can't you urge him?" Xiao Ziyu shook his head and said, "Uncle, you don't know. I am in charge of the Ministry of Works. The memorials related to the Ministry of Justice are directly handed to Li Mu. After Li Mu deals with them, they will be handed to the assistant minister. If Li Mu doesn't put them in, the memorial can't be handed in at all." "Sure enough," Commandery Prince Nanyang said with a sullen face. "He and Li Yi's daughter are unclear. He will definitely cover for her. The memorial can't be handed to the Central Secretariat. It should be handed directly to His Majesty." The official nodded and said, "I will try." Changle Palace. Li Mu opened a memorial. It was still asking the imperial court to deal with Li Qing. Whether it was the handwriting or the content, it was exactly the same as what he saw 3 days ago. This official was rather persistent. Li Mu noted down the name of this official from the Ministry of Personnel, Wang Luan, and put the memorial aside. After calculating the time, he stood up and walked to the imperial kitchen. The empress took Xiao Bai to the imperial kitchen to admire the flowers. Before she returned, Li Mu had to prepare lunch. 3 days later. Royal Prince Mansion of Nanyang. Commandery Prince Nanyang paced around the room and asked, "Why is there still no news?" The official was also puzzled and said, "I don't know either." At this moment, a servant walked in and whispered a few words into Duke Nanyang's ear. Commandery Prince Nanyang was taken aback and asked, "Book of 10,000 people?" The servant nodded and said, "Someone from King Ping's mansion came to pass on the news. Someone is urging the people in the various counties to write a petition to plead for mercy for that woman." Commandery Prince Nanyang snorted coldly and said, "So that's what he's planning. If this matter attracted the attention of the people in the 36 counties and caused them to write a petition to the people, the imperial court might really compromise. After all, the people's hearts were the foundation for the continuation of the Great Show. If it was only the Luoyang, it would be fine. However, if the people of the 36 counties all pleaded for mercy for that woman, even the law would have to give in. If they also had the book of 10,000 people when they were sentenced, then he would still be the Minister of Personnel now. If he couldn't get something, then no one else could." Commandery Prince Nanyang's expression was cold as he said, "Although I don't know who gave him the idea, it's impossible for him to save Li Yi's daughter. How dare he hold the people's hearts hostage and make the Ministry of Personnel send the consecrated department to destroy all the book of 10,000 people?" After all these years of operation, the Ministry of Personnel had been built into an iron bucket by him. The people in the Ministry of Personnel were all officials of the old party. Although he wasn't in the Ministry of Personnel, he still had absolute control over it. When the official named Wang Luan heard this, he bowed and said, "I'll make the arrangements right away." In a certain county, in front of a temporary stage built outside the city, an actor who had just finished his performance took out a roll of silk and said, "The book of 10,000 people is only a few hundred people away. Everyone, please sign your names on this and do your part to protect the bloodline of the loyal officials." After listening to the play, the people were already enraged. They were filled with righteous indignation as they pressed their fingerprints on the silk. The material used to leave their fingerprints was originally made of cinnabar. However, some people directly bit their fingertips in anger and left their fingerprints on the silk. Not long after, The people gradually dispersed. An actor looked at the densely packed fingerprints on the silk and heaved a sigh of relief. He said, "It should be enough." Just as they were about to leave, a few powerful auras suddenly approached above their heads. Several figures floated down from the sky and said coldly, "The consecrated department is handling the case. Leave the book of 10,000 people and we can let you go." 15 minutes later, the consecrated department's mouths were stuffed with rags and tied to a tree. The actors flew into the air and flew into the distance. "I didn't expect that we, the disciples of the Fulu school, would come out to perform. The person that the imperial court wants to execute is the disciple of the sect master, which is our martial uncle. In order to save martial uncle, this is something that should be done. Didn't you see that even our master has personally come? Let's not talk about it anymore. The book of 10,000 people for this county has been collected. When we return and hand it in, everyone will be able to obtain an earth-ranked Fulu. Such a good thing should be given more." After many days, Li Mu once again saw Yu Zhenzi in his home. Yu Zhenzi stepped into the courtyard and waved his hand. Many bolts of cloth floated in front of Li Mu. These bolts of cloth were covered with red fingerprints. They were clearly ordinary cloth, but they emitted powerful auras, forcing Lu Hanyan, Wan Wan, and Xiaobai to retreat. When the auras swept over Li Mu, they seemed to resonate with some aura on his body and gently passed through him. Yu Zhenzi said, "These are the book of 10,000 people for the 36 counties." Li Mu put away the 36 bolts of cloth and said, "Many thanks, senior sister." Yu Zhenzi said, "Senior brother sect master said that if the great Zhou court does not distinguish between good and evil, then there is no need to stay in the divine capital. It is better to return to the Fulu school as soon as possible to raise your cultivation and prepare to succeed the sect master." Li Mu smiled and said, "I believe in His Majesty." Although the great Zhou court was not worth it, within the divine capital, there was still someone like Li Mu who was worth it. In recent days, many officials in the imperial court had submitted memorials, requesting that Li Yi's daughter be severely punished. However, the memorials they submitted were like stones sinking into the sea. There was no response. During the morning court session, an official finally could not bear it anymore. An official from the Ministry of Personnel stood up and said, "Reporting to His Majesty, under the circumstances of Li Yi's case being unclear, Li Yi's daughter assassinated 5 officials of the imperial court. Such behavior is truly too vile. If she is not severely punished, it will not be enough to uphold the law and establish the prestige of the nation." As soon as he finished speaking, another person stood up. Zhang Chun looked at him and said, "Sir, your words are incorrect. How could Lord Li's daughter not know whether or not he committed treason? Those 5 people were the main culprits who framed Lord Li back then. Even death could not wipe out their crimes. If they did not die, they should be executed today." The official from the Ministry of Personnel said, "The nation has its own laws. If they are guilty, the imperial court will judge them. It is not up to her to execute them privately." Zhang Chun said mockingly, "The imperial court? Lord Li has been wronged for 14 years. Has the imperial court had any intention of overturning the case for him?" On the other hand, the officials who framed him back then were all in high positions, from 4th to 3rd rank officials. How do you expect people to trust the imperial court? The official from the Ministry of Personnel said coldly, "This is also not a reason for her to kill. If we forgive her, how can we uphold the law?" Zhang Chun retorted, "If we uphold the law, how can we uphold the will of the people?" The two of them were in a heated argument. Shangguanli walked out from behind the curtain and said, "Silence." The Empress's voice was heard from behind the curtain. "What do you think?" As soon as she finished speaking, the hall fell into a brief silence. Usually, the highest-ranking officials would be the first to speak on this topic. However, people like the head of the Secretariat and the ministers of the 6 ministries would not quarrel with others in the imperial court. Most of the time, it was the officials below them who spoke on their behalf. After a brief silence, some officials stood up one after another. "I think that Lord Wang of the Ministry of Personnel has a point. One case is another case. These 2 cases should not be mixed together. Lord Li Yi has been wrongly accused, but his daughter has indeed violated the law." Seeing these people step forward, many officials sighed in their hearts. Although that was the case, the imperial court still owed their family in Li Yi's case. If they still wanted to execute his daughter, then what was the point of overturning the case for him? However, because of Li Yi's overturning of the case, both the new and old parties were deeply involved. Even if they had different opinions, they did not dare to speak out. After another official seconded the motion, a figure finally walked out from the crowd. The officials in the imperial court all looked at him. These days, everything that happened in the imperial court was caused by Li Mu alone. This time, he was probably one of the people who wanted to protect Li Yi's daughter. Li Mu walked to the front of the hall and did not express his opinion. He only said calmly, "I would like your majesty and all the officials to see something first." With a wave of his hand, a pile of things suddenly appeared in the crepe myrtle hall. There were a total of 36 pieces of what looked like cloth and silk. They slowly flew into the air, then connected together and slowly unfolded. A shocking scene appeared in everyone's eyes. The 36 pieces of cloth connected together formed a huge canvas that was 200 feet long. The canvas was densely covered with blood-red fingerprints. As the canvas unfolded, an extremely powerful aura suddenly spread out. Under the impact of this aura, the officials in the hall could not help but retreat. Some even fell on their buttocks. Only a small number of people were able to remain standing under the impact of this aura. Behind Li Mu, several officials who had just stood up and suggested that Li Qing be severely punished retreated more than 10 steps. One of them even directly withdrew from the crepe myrtle hall. An official looked at the huge canvas in front of him and saw the faint smell of blood on it. He murmured, "A blood letter of the people, a blood letter of the people condensed from the power of faith of the people." Li Mu stood in front of the canvas and slowly said, "Lord Li was loyal and patriotic, but because of a scoundrel's framing, his entire family died in vain. The imperial court owes the Li family too much. The people of 36 counties, 360,000 people, plead your majesty for mercy." Chapter 370. In the crepe myrtle palace, the 36 scrolls of the Book of the People floated in front of the officials. Although there were no words on the unfurled white cloth, the fingerprints and palm prints represented the wishes of the people. The will of the people could not be deceived, nor could it be defied. This was the foundation of the Great Show. Under the pressure of the Book of the People, the officials who had just stepped forward to request the execution of Li Yi's daughter found it difficult to speak again. They could no longer speak. After Li Mu took out the Book of the People, if they spoke again, the opposition would not be from Li Mu, but from the will of the people. For the imperial court, in the face of the will of the people, there was nothing that could not be compromised, including them. The noisy imperial court suddenly quieted down. After a long period of silence, a figure slowly stepped forward. Zhang Chun bowed and said loudly, "Your Majesty, please have mercy." His voice echoed in the crepe myrtle palace. Soon, another official took a deep breath and slowly stepped forward. He bowed and said, "Your Majesty, please have mercy." 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 One figure, 2 figures, 3 figures. In the hall filled with the will of the people, more and more officials stepped forward. Finally, at the front of the crowd, the head of the secretariat held up his ceremonial tablet and said, "The will of the people cannot be defied." The former assistant minister of the Ministry of Personnel, Li Yi, suffered 14 years of injustice. The people pity him. This is Li Yi's death, and also the imperial court's death. I implore your majesty to comply with the will of the people and show mercy. The 2 attendants also sighed softly and stood out. Although Li Yi's daughter violated the law, but considering that her family was framed by treacherous officials and suffered great injustice, and the people she killed were all guilty officials, I implore your majesty to show mercy. The will of the people cannot be defied. Your majesty, please have mercy. The head of the secretariat and the attendants all pleaded. Finally, even the head of the officials, stepped forward and said slowly, "The will of the people is the most important. I implore your majesty to comply with the will of the people and pardon Lord Li's daughter." Behind the curtain, the empress's voice was majestic. "Since this is the will of the people of the 36 counties, and the ministers have pleaded for her, I can't be stubborn. After the court, the secretariat will immediately draft a pardon." Imperial Ancestral Temple. Li Mu walked into the deepest part of the prison and said, "Open the door." The prison guard behind him immediately took out the key he had prepared and opened the cell door. Li Mu walked into the cell, reached out his hand to Li Qing and said, "Let's go home." Outside the imperial city, a large crowd had gathered on the wide street. Countless gazes were focused in the direction of the palace gate. Until two figures walked out of the palace. It's young Lord Li. The woman beside him is Lord Li Yi's daughter. Has the court finally pardoned her? Lord Li Yi has a descendant. Seeing the two of them walk out side by side, the commoner spoke excitedly. Li Mu and Li Qing walked out of the palace and back to the Li residence. The people of Shindu followed them all the way. Standing in front of the Li mansion, Li Qing raised her head and looked at the plaque with the words, Li Mansion, written on it. It stood there for a long time. Creak. The door of the Li Mansion slowly opened from the inside. Lu Hanyan walked out and looked at Li Qing. She smiled and said, Welcome home. In the Crepe Myrtle Palace, when Li Mu took out the book of 10,000 people from the 36 counties, some people had already lost. Once the book of 10,000 people, which represented the will of the people, the court officials, whether they were willing or not, only had one choice. In the end, under the lead of a few officials from the 3 provinces, all the court officials pleaded for mercy. In addition to the push of the people's will, the empress could only reluctantly comply with them and pardon Li Qing. In the Li mansion, Li Mu sat cross-legged on the bed. The telekinesis in his body was almost full. When he walked out of the palace with Li Qing, the entire street was covered by telekinesis. He had just taken out the spiritual jade from the flask space. In just a moment, the spiritual energy in the spiritual jade would be completely absorbed. Even the speed at which he took out the spiritual jade could not keep up with the speed of absorption. At this moment, in the North Court, with the Li Mansion as the center, a huge spiritual energy whirlpool had formed. The spiritual qi in the air of the entire divine capital was gathering towards the Li residence in the northern garden. In the divine capital, some of the more powerful cultivators had already noticed the abnormality. Especially those who lived in the North Court, they could clearly feel that the spiritual energy in the surroundings was becoming more and more abundant. However, when they tried to absorb it, they realized that they could not absorb any spiritual energy at all. The huge spiritual energy whirlpool in the North Court was violently absorbing all the spiritual energy in the surroundings. Someone is breaking through. What exactly is this person's cultivation? How could he cause such a huge commotion? Countless figures flew up from all directions and looked in the direction where the spiritual energy was gathering. That place is the Li Mansion. This familiar feeling. Could it be that Li Mu is also cultivating telekinesis? It's the same as Li Yi back then. No wonder his cultivation speed is so fast at such a young age. He actually dares to cultivate this path. Such a fast and domineering way of gathering spiritual energy was not something a normal cultivation path could achieve. Even a spirit-gathering array was far from it. Only telekinesis could have such an effect. The path of telekinesis was the fastest way to improve one's cultivation among all the paths of cultivation. The reason why so few people cultivated it was not because they did not want to, but because it was too difficult. Telekinesis originated from the people. To win the people's trust, one had to stand on the people's side. However, the interests of the people and the interests of the people in power were often contradictory. To stand on the people's side was to stand on the opposite side of the people in power. To walk on this path, one had to dare to do what ordinary people did not dare to do. There had been people who had done this before, but they had all died. After that, very few people walked on this path. If Li Mu did not have the Empress's protection, he would have been like Li Yi back then. His entire family would have been executed countless times. It was also because of the Empress's protection that he could walk to this day, and become a righteous person in the hearts of the people in the divine capital. He relied on the people's telekinesis to quickly break through. The spiritual energy vortex above the Li Mansion spun for more than 2 hours. It almost sucked out all the spiritual energy in the divine capital before it slowly dissipated. At the same time, Li Mu, who was sitting cross-legged on the bed, slowly opened his eyes. The divine light in his eyes was restrained. The aura on his body was also extremely obscure. In the past he was a sharp sword. Now he had hidden his edge. Saving Li Qing was something he had to do. It was also in accordance with the people's will. With this, the telekinesis of the people in his body reached its peak. It allowed him to break through to the 5th level in one go. It also allowed him to resolve one of his obsessions. Li Mu walked out of the room. Hyun Jinko stood in the courtyard and smiled. Congratulations, junior brother. Li Mu clasped his hands and bowed to the two of them. Thank you for your help these days, senior brother and senior sister. Hyun Jinko said, "There's no need for thanks between fellow disciples." Yu Zhenzi said calmly, "The disciples of the Fulu school are not to be bullied." Hyun Jinko continued, "Junior brother, you just broke through. Your magic power is not stable yet. First stabilize your cultivation. As for other things, it won't be too late to talk about them later." Li Mu said, "I'll stabilize it later. I still have something to do. I have to go out for a while." Outside the palace, Li Mu and Li Qing stood side by side as they watched Zhou Zhong walk out of the palace. His hands were shackled by iron chains and his dermic powers were also sealed. This chain would only be removed when he arrived at the place of exile. 2 Fifth Realm worshippers stood behind him. They would escort him all the way to the place of exile. Zhou Zhong looked at Li Qing with a gentle gaze. Finally, he looked at Li Mu and said, "When you have time, go to the Ministry of Justice and find Wei Peng. He has something that I left for you." Wei Peng is a promising talent. With a little promotion, he can take on great responsibilities. Li Mu nodded and said, "I understand." Zhou Zhong looked at Li Qing again and said, "Listen to Li Mu in the future. Don't be so rash. He knows how to protect you better than I do." Li Qing lowered her head and said softly, "Okay." Zhou Zhong finally looked at Li Mu and said, "Take good care of Qing." One of the worshippers said, "It's time to go." Zhou Zhong's gaze swept across his face and said, "Let's go." After sending Zhou Zhong out of the city with Li Qing and back to her residence, Li Mu went to the Ministry of Justice. Soon the director of the Ministry of Justice walked out of the office and sighed. "Lord Li, Lord Zhou, I really didn't expect," Li Mu said. "This might be the result that he wanted. Where's Wei Peng? I have something to talk to him about." The director of the Ministry of Justice sighed again and said, "I'll go get him." After a while, Wei Peng walked out of a guard room. He seemed to know Li Mu's purpose and handed a wooden box to Li Mu. This wooden box was not locked. It seemed to be just a simple buckle. Li Mu tried to open it but found that he could not open it at all. He channeled his magic power and used the art of great strength but still could not open it. Li Mu looked at the wooden box carefully and found that there were complicated runes carved on the box like a seal. From the complexity of these runes, it would be very difficult for him to open it with his current magic power. Therefore, he took the wooden box and returned to the Li residence to let Yu Zhenzi and Hyun Jinko take a look. Hyun Jinko looked carefully and said, "This is a seal rune. It can only be opened with brute force. If other methods are used, or if the runes are destroyed, I'm afraid the item in the box will also be destroyed." He tried to open the wooden box but still failed. Yu Zhenzi tried again, but it still ended in failure. She looked at the wooden box in her hand and said, "This seal is too strong. I'm afraid only those above the 7th realm can open it. If you have time, go back to Mount Baiyun and ask Senior Brother Sect Master for help." Li Mu waved his hand. "No need." After a while, Changle Palace. Li Mu took the wooden box and walked to Zhou Yi, saying, "Your Majesty, I can't open this." Crack. Zhou Yi took the wooden box and opened it easily. Li Mu leaned over and saw a book in the box. He took out the book, flipped through a few pages and slowly closed it. Chapter 371. In Changle Palace, Li Mu handed the booklet to Zhou Yi and asked, "Your Majesty, how should we deal with these people?" Zhou Yi flipped open the booklet and glanced at it a few times. Then he asked Li Mu, "What do you think?" Li Mu thought for a moment and said, "I think that the Great Zhou's imperial court has been suffering from a chronic problem for a long time. The court officials have formed cliques for personal gain, and in order to suppress dissidents, they will do anything. If we want to cure this chaos, we need to use strong medicine. Your Majesty can also take this opportunity to support some of your trusted aides." Zhou Qiong rubbed the space between his brows and said to Li Mu, "I'll leave this matter to you." Li Mu bowed and said, "I obey." The booklet Zhou Zhong gave him recorded the crimes of many officials of the two parties over the years. Some of them were corrupt, some of them took bribes, some of them bent the law for personal gain, and some of them abused their power. These records filled the entire booklet. A month ago, Li Mu felt that the imperial court should still be stable. Over the past month, Li Mu gradually realized that the Great Zhou's imperial court had a problem from the root. Rather than maintaining the stability on the surface and letting them slowly nibble away at the decaying Great Zhou, it was better to cut the Gordian knot and use strong medicine to weaken the old and new factions. At the same time, power would gradually return to the hands of the Empress. When the empress completely controlled the imperial court, whoever passed the throne of the great Zhou to would have nothing to do with the old and new parties. Even if the empress didn't pass the throne to the Zhou clan or the Xiao clan, it would be her own business to pass the throne to her own son. Or if the empress's cultivation reached the 8th level, then no matter how strong the old and new parties were, they wouldn't even have the right to protest under absolute power. In that case, who would dare to bully him in the entire Zhou province, let alone the imperial court? Unfortunately, this could only exist in Li Mu's imagination. The empress' 7th level came more from her inheritance than from her own cultivation. Unless she encountered a greater opportunity, the 7th level was the peak that she could reach in this lifetime. At present, all the 7th realm powerhouses that Li Mu knew, including Xianjizi, were promoted to the upper realm through inheritance. Zhou Yi leaned against the dragon throne and propped up his head. He said, "I'm a bit tired. Here are a few memorials. Help me take a look." Li Mu moved a chair and sat in front of the table. He said, "Your Majesty should rest first. When you wake up, the soup in the imperial kitchen will be almost ready." Although it was unlikely that a 7th realm cultivator would tire herself out, Li Mu didn't forget that the empress' inner demon had yet to be removed. Suppressing the inner demon was an extremely taxing task. The exhaustion of mental energy was no less than fighting a battle with an expert of the same level. With Li Mu here, she didn't have to worry about court matters. Zhou Yi leaned against the dragon throne and closed her eyes to recover her mind. Suddenly, a cloud of fog appeared in front of her. When the fog dissipated, she was no longer in Changle Palace, but in the imperial garden. Zhou Yi quickly realized that this was a dream. As a 7th realm cultivator, she could control her body and consciousness. However, dreams didn't seem to have much to do with a person's consciousness. Instead, it was dominated by another consciousness. She wanted to withdraw her consciousness from the dream, but she heard a sound coming from the depths of the imperial garden. This made her change her mind. She was also interested in the contents of the subconscious fantasy. Thus, she walked along the path of the imperial garden and slowly walked into the depths. As she walked, the conversation in the depths of the garden gradually became clear. "This orange is very sweet. It's a tribute orange from Jiangnan. Try it. I want you to feed me." "Nonsense. Humph. You're not even willing to do this for me. You don't love me anymore." Okay. Open your mouth." In the depths of the garden, there seemed to be a couple passionately in love. Zhou Yi had never experienced love, so she didn't feel envious. She just felt that even the fragrance of the flowers in the imperial garden couldn't cover up the sour smell in the air. Just as she was about to leave, the couple sitting in the pavilion suddenly turned around. In the pavilion, the other her was peeling the orange with a smile and sending the orange pieces into the mouth of the person in her arms. And the person nestled in her arms was actually Changle Palace. Zhou Yi, who was lying on the rocking chair, suddenly opened her beautiful eyes. Fine sweat even seeped out of her forehead. After Li Mu finished reading the last memorial, he inadvertently glanced over and found that the empress had woken up. Then he asked with some surprise, "Your Majesty, are you very hot?" Zhou Yi looked at Li Mu. The scene in her mind appeared again. She realized that her inner demon seemed to be getting more and more serious. Li Mu noticed the empress's absent-mindedness. He waved his hand in front of her eyes and whispered, "Your Majesty, Your Majesty!" Zhou Yi came back to her senses and said, "I'm fine. You can go back first." Li Mu said, "The soup in the imperial kitchen is ready. I'll go get a bowl for you." Zhou Yi waved her hand and said, "No need. I'll let Ali leave in a while. You can go back first." Li Mu tidied up the memorials he had read and put the chair back in place. He said, "Then I'll go back first." Walking out of Changle Palace, he sighed softly. The reason he came to Changle Palace was that he didn't know how to face the situation at home. He wanted to sort out his thoughts first, but the Empress obviously didn't give him the chance. It was now lunchtime. In the Imperial Palace, the officials of the various government offices began to walk out in groups. An official looked at Li Mu walking out of Changle Palace and said with emotion, "What is a favored official?" "This is a favored official. The number of times he goes to Her Majesty's bedchamber is more than the number of times he goes to the Secretariat," another official said. "What is he holding in his hand?" "It looks like a book." When his eyes swept over the book in Li Mu's hand, he inexplicably shivered. He crossed his arms and said, "It's cold. Tomorrow I'll have to wear more clothes." Li Mu walked out of the imperial palace and all the way back to the Li residence. He stood in front of the gate, but he didn't step in. It was hard for him to imagine what it would be like if Li Qing and Lu Hanyan appeared at home at the same time. In Lu Hanyan's eyes, Li Qing was undoubtedly Li Mu's ex-girlfriend. Although they had never confirmed their relationship, Li Mu couldn't deny that Li Qing was indeed his first love. If it wasn't for fate, the person sleeping next to him every night might be someone else. When a wife meets an ex-girlfriend, and the current master of the Li residence meets an ex-master, it would be good if the two didn't fight. It couldn't be a happy and harmonious sisterly relationship, right? The gate of the residence suddenly opened. Xiaobai ran out of the courtyard and asked in confusion, "Benefactor, what are you doing at the gate?" Li Mu rubbed her head, took a deep breath, and stepped into the house. There wasn't the awkward atmosphere he imagined. Li Qing and Lu Hanyan were sitting in the courtyard and talking. They were neither too enthusiastic nor too distant. Li Mu walked into the courtyard and said, "I'm back." No one paid attention to him. Lu Hanyan looked at Li Qing and asked, "Where was Miss Li's previous room?" "I'll ask Wan Wan to help you tidy it up." Li Qing said, "No need, I'll tidy it up myself." Lu Hanyan shook her head and said, "This used to be your home, and it will still be your home in the future. You don't have to be so polite in your own home." What Li Mu was worried about didn't happen. Lu Hanyan, who had always been stingy in relationships, was so magnanimous that he couldn't believe it. At night, when Li Mu was about to go to his room to sleep, the bedroom door slammed shut just as he reached the door. "In the room," Lu Hanyan said gently. "From today onwards, you'll sleep in the study." Her voice was very gentle, but the words she said were as cold as an iceberg. Late at night, on the small bed in the study, Li Mu hugged Xiaobai and stroked her smooth fur. Only then did he feel some warmth in his heart. She was the only one who would stay by his side all this time. In a certain residence in Nanyuan, in a secret room, a soft conversation could be heard. "Zhou Zhong has left Chengdu today and has been sent to the border counties. The two consecrators escorting him are our people. This person can't be left alive. He betrayed us and knows too many of our secrets. If he doesn't die, he'll always be a disaster. Don't worry, I've already made arrangements. He won't be able to reach the border counties." In a certain county in Great Zhou, under the night sky, a stream of light streaked across the sky and landed on a mountain. A consecrator looked at Zhou Zhong, who was standing at the bow of the flying boat, and said, "Come down." Zhou Zhong looked at the vast wilderness and asked, "My lords, are we going to sleep here tonight?" The consecrator said, "What? You're a criminal official. Do you want to stay in a high-class inn?" He looked at Zhou Zhong and couldn't help but ask, "Lord Zhou, you're a smart person. Why did you do such a stupid thing? Why did you give up your position as the assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice? Why did you choose to go to the north to die?" The other consecrator said impatiently, "Why are you talking nonsense with him? Just do it. We'll enjoy ourselves outside for a while before returning to Chengdu." Zhou Zhong looked at them and asked, "You want to kill me?" The consecrator said, "Lord Zhou, are you so naive as to think that you won't have to die if His Majesty shows mercy?" Zhou Zhong said calmly, "You're deceiving the emperor." The consecrator laughed coldly and said, "If we kill you, we'll burn you to ashes with the true Samadhi fire. Who would know? Anyway, you criminal officials will all die in the hands of ghosts and demons in the end." Zhou Zhong asked again, "You really want to kill me?" The consecrator extended his hand. A ball of blazing flame floated in his palm. He walked towards Zhou Zhong and said, "In your next life, be a smart person." Zhou Zhong looked at him and said softly, "Deceiving the emperor is a crime punishable by death." Poof! The flame in the consecrator's hand suddenly went out. It wasn't that he cancelled his spell. It was that his spell had no more mana to support it. The moment Zhou Zhong finished speaking, his head and body suddenly separated. The wound was as smooth as a cut. Blood splattered 3 feet high. With the death of his physical body, his nascent spirit left his body. His expression was full of fear. He subconsciously wanted to escape, but in his confusion and fear, he slowly dissipated. In the blink of an eye, a fifth realm cultivator's physical body was destroyed and his soul dispersed. Seeing his comrade die in such a strange way, the other consecrator's face turned pale. He turned around and fled without hesitation. His body streaked across the sky like a stream of light and quickly disappeared into the night sky. On the mountain top, Zhou said, "Come back." The consecrator who fled rolled back and appeared at his previous position. Zhou looked at him and asked, "You haven't finished your work. Where are you going?" Chapter 372. Fairies' Capital. Department of Worship. A few worshippers looked at a broken jade tablet on the table with solemn expressions. The life talisman is broken. Is Ma Yi dead? Where is he? Ma Yi and Zhang Zong escorted Zhou to the place of exile. Could it be that Zhou broke free from the torture instruments and escaped? Zhang Zong's life talisman is still intact. Why didn't he send a message back? Just as he finished speaking, a high official strode in and said, "I've just received a message from High Official Zhang. Ma Yi wanted to kill Zhou while he was escorting him, but he was killed by Zhou." As soon as these words were spoken, it caused an uproar. Why did worshipper Ma want to kill Zhou? Zhou's mana was restricted. How did he kill worshipper Ma? The Department of Worship was controlled by the royal family in the previous dynasty. Even now, the Xiao royal family still had absolute control over the Department of Worship. Many worshippers in the Department of Worship were loyal to the old party. They would listen to the old party's orders and kill Zhou to vent their anger in the middle of his exile. This was reasonable. However, Ma Yi wanted to kill Zhou but was killed instead. This was somewhat unbelievable. Zhou's strength was slightly inferior to Ma Yi's. Under the circumstances where his mana was not restricted, he was not Ma Yi's match. With his mana restricted, his strength was less than 10%. A transcendent realm cultivator could probably kill him. How could he kill another transcendent realm cultivator in the presence of a 5th-level worshipper? A worshipper looked troubled and asked, "How should we deal with this?" Another worshipper said, "Zhou is a sinner and has committed such a grave crime. If he is not killed, justice will not be served." Everyone looked at him and did not agree. Ma Yi tried to kill Zhou while escorting him to exile. To put it simply, this was an abuse of power. To put it bluntly, this was deceiving the emperor. Regardless of the reason, as long as he wanted to kill Zhou and acted, it was reasonable and legal for Zhou to kill him. The old party wanted to get rid of Zhou through the Department of Worship. This was causing trouble for the Department of Worship. The worshipper thought for a while and said, "The Department of Worship does not have the authority to decide on this matter. Let's report it to the imperial court first." Today, when Li Mu was helping the empress deal with the reports, he learned that the worshipper escorting Zhou wanted to kill Zhou during his exile and was killed by Zhou instead. Although he knew that Zhou was stronger than him, he was still able to kill a 5th-level expert with his mana restricted. This was something only a transcendent realm cultivator. However, no matter how powerful Zhou was, he would not be at the 6th realm. Li Mu was certain of this. In Li Mu's mind, Zhou's of cultivation was a mystery. Of Zhou's also of Lord. If he had not secretly helped Mrs. Chu that time, Li Mu might have thought that he was just an ordinary cultivator in the Fate realm. According to the news sent back by the surviving consecrator, Zhou only said one sentence: "Deceiving the monarch according to the law, should be executed." That consecrator Ma's body and head were separated from his body, and then his soul dispersed. This made Li Mu think of an unpopular cultivation school. Before the rise of Buddhism, there were all sorts of cultivation schools. There was the school of medicine, the school of military, the school of music, the school of legalism, and so on. These schools all had their own specialties. Later, when Buddhism prospered and gradually became the mainstream of cultivation, these smaller schools slowly became extinct. Of these schools, Li Mu had the deepest impression of the school of legalism. The cultivators of legalism did not cultivate abilities or Taoist techniques. Once they reached the peak of their cultivation, their words became law. Taoist techniques and abilities were useless before them. Even though this ability was not limitless, it still made Li Mu very envious. However, this was now the world of Buddhism. The cultivation methods of the school of legalism had long been extinct. Occasionally, a successor of the school of legalism would appear, but they were like a flash in the pan, quickly disappearing. From Zhou's actions and his identity, it was extremely likely that he cultivated the school of legalism. Throughout history, the successors of legalism would actively enter the court and push for legal reform. Perhaps their cultivation had something to do with this. The school of legalism did not cultivate dermic powers. Their attacks were more like Taoist techniques. If Zhou Zhong cultivated both Taoist techniques and Taoist techniques, then his true strength might be extremely close to the sixth realm. If a fifth realm transcendent wanted to touch him, he would undoubtedly have kicked an iron plate. Through this incident, another problem was exposed. The Department of Worship was no longer the Department of Worship of Great Zhou, but the Department of Worship of the Old Party. The prefectures of Great Zhou had a high degree of autonomy. The Department of Worship's function was equivalent to the Great Zhou FBI. It specialized in dealing with matters that could not be dealt with locally. If it was controlled by someone, there would be very serious consequences. Xiao Yu's incident was one of them. Zhou Zhong's incident also explained the problem. Since they had decided to do something big, they might as well start with the Department of Worship. However, before that, there was an even more important matter that the Secretariat had to deal with immediately. After overturning the case for Li Qing's father, 2 ministers and 2 assistant ministers of the 6 ministries were removed from their positions. All of a sudden, there were 4 empty positions for officials above the 4th rank. The Ministry of Personnel was also without a leader. Without officials to replace them, the Yamen would not be able to continue operating. Regarding this, the Secretariat had been arguing for an entire morning. The Ministry of Personnel was the lifeblood of the Old Party. It was originally completely controlled by the Old Party. 1 minister and 2 assistant ministers were all members of the Old Party. The minister of the Ministry of Personnel was the Duke of Nanyang. Through the Ministry of Personnel, the Old Party controlled the assessment, appointment, and dismissal of most officials in Great Zhou. They also indirectly influenced the Department of Worship. It could be said that they had grasped the lifeline of the imperial court. In the process of overturning the case for Li Yi, Li Mu and Zhou Zhong had cut off the lifeblood of the Old Party. It seemed that the Old Party had only lost 3 officials, but in reality, they had suffered heavy losses. The Old Party was the upper echelons of the government and could influence countless lower echelons of the government. Without the Ministry of Personnel, the Old Party would lose half of their authority in the imperial court. Therefore, they hated Zhou Zhong to the bone and wished that they could get rid of Zhou Zhong on the way to exile him. This time, the position of the Minister of the Ministry of Personnel was contested by Xiao Ziyu, who represented the royal Xiao family, and Zhou Xiong, who represented the Zhou family, for the entire morning. They argued until their faces were red and their necks were thick, but no one gave in to the other. It was impossible for them to give in. In terms of power, the Minister of the Ministry of Personnel was the most powerful among the 6 ministers. The Old Party wanted to take back the position that originally belonged to them, and the new party would not let go of this one and only opportunity. If they obtained the Ministry of Personnel, they would be able to suppress the Old Party. Compared to them, the others did not speak much. This important position did not belong to the Old Party, but to the new party. It could not fall to anyone else. As for the Minister of the Ministry of Personnel, the Secretariat could submit 7 candidates. In order to ensure that nothing went wrong, the Xiao family wanted to monopolize the 7 positions. Naturally, the Zhou family also wanted to monopolize it. Neither side would let the other have their way. As the two argued back and forth, Li Mu felt a headache coming on. Why don't you take a look and see if the person you nominated has any qualifications? My person doesn't have any qualifications, but your person does? At most I'll give you 1. 7 positions, not 1 less. This position originally belonged to us. Li Mu finally could not take it anymore. He slammed the table and said, "The 2 of you, that's enough." He looked at Zhou Xiong and Xiao Ziyu and said, "The 2 of you have argued for 4 hours over a single position. Do you still have any respect for your colleagues? There are still 2 assistant ministers and 1 minister to recommend. Are you going to discuss this until next year?" The other officials of the Secretariat agreed with Li Mu and spoke up. "Yes, Lord Li is right. If the 2 of you continue like this, when will it end? Let's discuss and come up with a plan." After some thought, Li Mu said, "How about this? Of the 7 positions, each of you can have 3. The last position can be left empty or someone else can be chosen." "No, I don't agree." The 2 of them refused without hesitation. Whether it was the new party or the old party, they were both determined to obtain the position of Minister of Personnel. They did not want to give up even 1 position, much less 3. "What right do you have to disagree?" Li Mu's face darkened as he said, "As officials of the Secretariat, Are you more handsome than the other officials or have a higher cultivation? Why should the two of you decide on 7 positions? By allowing the two of you to discuss this, we are giving you face. If you don't want it, then we won't give it to you. For these 7 positions, the 6 officials of the Secretariat will each recommend one person, and the last one will be decided by Assistant Minister Liu. Are the two of you satisfied? Zhou Xiong and Xiao Ziyu were speechless. The other 3 officials of the Secretariat felt extremely satisfied. Li Mu's words had spoken out what they had been thinking for many years. There were 6 Imperial Secretariat officials in the Central Secretariat. Everyone had the same rank and status. Due to the influence of the old and new factions, they usually gave these 2 people more power to speak. If they continued to push their luck, then they would be asking for more face. Which of the officials of the Secretariat did not come from an illustrious clan? They were not inferior to the Shao clan or the Zhou clan. For thousands of years, the dynasties of this land had, at some point in time, shared the same surname as them. Who did not have some pride in their hearts? Not long after Li Mu's voice fell, Wang Shi of the Secretariat said, "I agree with what Sir Li said." Zhang Huaili continuing to argue like this is not a solution. If the two of you do not agree with Lord Li's initial proposal, then we will each nominate one person. Wouldn't this be fairer? Song Liangyu looked at the two and asked, "Lord Xiao, Lord Zhou, what do you think?" Xiao Ziyu and Zhou Xiong thought quickly. The second situation was naturally the one they did not want to see the most. If each of them could only nominate one person, then there was not even a 20% chance. If each of them nominated 3 people, then the chance was close to 50%. They were clear about this. The two of them looked at each other and said at the same time, "Then let's follow Lord Li's initial proposal." The two of them each wrote 3 names on the paper. Xiao Ziyu asked, "The nomination of the last person. That is none of your business." Li Mu waved his hand and said, "Out of the 7 spots, the 2 of you have taken up 6. The 5 of us do not even have a chance to nominate one person?" Zhou Xiong and Xiao Ziyu did not speak. The last person to nominate was just to make up the numbers. As long as it was not someone from the opposing faction, they had no objections. Zhou Xiong was still worried and added, "The position of Minister of Personnel is very important. Zhang Chun does not have enough experience. If Lord Li wants to nominate him, I'm afraid it is against the rules. Do you think that I am like the two of you who only know how to suppress dissidents and appoint people based on favoritism?" Li Mu looked at him with disdain and said, "Besides, even if it is a nomination, the final decision is made by His Majesty. Do you think that I can make the decision for the Minister of Personnel?" Chapter 373. The position of Minister of Official Personnel Affairs was extremely important. Even if Li Mu was a favored official, the Empress would not let him make the decision. However, Xiao Ziyu was still worried. He asked, "If I may ask, who would you like to nominate?" Li Mu actually wanted to nominate Zhang Chun. After all, he owed old Zhang a lot of favors. If he became Minister of Official Personnel Affairs, he would have the right to apply for a 5-sectioned house from the imperial court. He would have servants and maids. However, the Minister of Official Personnel Affairs was a 3rd-rank official. He was now a 5th-rank official. No matter how he skipped a rank, he could not let the Shendu Medallion directly promote him to Minister of Official Personnel Affairs. If it was not Zhang Chun, it did not matter who else was. Li Mu thought for a while and said, "Lu Qing, the Assistant Minister of Rights." It was sad to say that after being in the imperial court for so long, others had formed cliques and cliques, but he did not even have anyone to do so. In fact, when it came to nominating for the position of Minister of Official Personnel Affairs, he could only think of Lu Qing, the Assistant Minister of Rights. Xiao Ziyu looked at Li Mu in surprise and said, "The Assistant Minister of Rights has just been promoted. Isn't it too frequent to promote him to Minister of Official Personnel Affairs in such a short period of time?" Li Mu looked at him and said, "Why don't we give this opportunity to Lord Xiao?" Before Xiao Ziyu could answer, Zhou Xiong immediately said, "Lu Qing is Lu Qing then. He's currently at rank 4. It's fine as long as he has the qualifications to be nominated for rank 3. You're meddling too much, aren't you?" Lu Qing had just been promoted to Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Rights not long ago. In principle, it was impossible for him to be promoted to Minister of the Ministry of Personnel in the near future. In this way, the uncertainty of the last position could be eliminated. Wasn't nominating Lu Qing much better than Li Muzhen nominating a capable and experienced official? Although Zhou Xiong did not like Li Mu, he would not blindly oppose him at a time like this. Li Mu looked at the other 3 officials of the Secretariat and asked, I am just randomly nominating someone. Do the other 3 have any thoughts? The other 3 secretaries shook their heads in unison. Wang Shi said, let's listen to Sir Li. Both the new and old parties were determined to win the position of Minister of Personnel. It was useless for them to nominate him. Li Mu and Lu Qing were neither relatives nor friends. Nominating him was just to make up the numbers. Since it was just to make up the numbers, it didn't matter who made up the numbers. Under Li Mu's forceful intervention, Zhou Xiong and Xiao Ziyu made a compromise, and the candidate for the Minister of Personnel was finally decided. Zhang Huaili said, next, it's the 2 assistant ministers' turn. Xiao Ziyu quickly added, it's best if the position of Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Personnel is taken up by an official familiar with the Ministry of Personnel's affairs. It's more than suitable for the position to be replaced by 2 ministers of the Ministry of Personnel. There's nothing else to discuss. The other 3 officials from the Secretariat still did not express any opinions. In the past few years, the old party had already built the Ministry of Personnel into an iron bucket that was impenetrable. The 2 directors of the Ministry of Personnel were also officials from the old party through and through. They would not easily let others interfere. Li Mu looked at Xiao Ziyu and said indifferently, in my opinion, we should ask His Majesty to reduce the number of officials in the Secretariat. Xiao Ziyu did not know why Li Mu suddenly brought up this matter. He asked, why? Li Mu said, because Lord Xiao alone is enough for the Secretariat. You alone can make the decision for the important matters that require 6 Secretariat secretaries to discuss. The few of us are paid by the Imperial Court, but we don't do anything for the court. We really feel guilty. Xiao Ziyu's face turned red. Li Mu was blatantly saying that he acted arbitrarily. Zhou Xiong was somewhat gloating. He said, Lord Xiao is too domineering. Why don't you just decide on His Majesty's behalf who will take these 2 positions? Xiao Ziyu's face darkened. Then what do you think we should do? Zhou Xiong said, it's very simple. The 6 of us will each nominate 1 person. The last person will be decided by Assistant Minister Lu or Lord Head of the Secretariat. In any case, the new party would not be able to get either of the 2 assistant minister positions in the Ministry of Personnel. He did not mind muddying the waters so that the old party would not be able to get them either. Zhou Xiong's words pushed him to the opposite side of everyone. Xiao Ziyu was silent for a moment. He could only say, that's fair. Let's do it this way. It was rare that the 2 assistant minister positions in the Ministry of Personnel were decided by the 7 of them. The positions of Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice and Minister of Works were also contested by 2 people who represented the interests of the old and new parties. Under Li Mu's efforts, a few other people also received a few nominations. The other 3 officials of the Secretariat finally felt a sense of participation. This was actually the norm in the Secretariat. The reason there were 6 officials of the Secretariat was not only because they corresponded to the 6 ministries, but also because these 6 people belonged to different factions. This was to prevent one party or one faction from having too much say in important matters of the court. In the past few years, the court officials had taken sides, forming the old and new parties. They each occupied the court, and the structure of the Secretariat was also affected. It was practically Zhou Xiong and Xiao Ziyu's opinions. This situation finally changed after Li Mu came to the Secretariat. Under the protection of Her Majesty, the old and new parties could not do anything to him. After the 6 officials of the Secretariat decided on the candidates for the positions, they handed them over to the Assistant Minister of the Secretariat and the head of the Secretariat. If the officials of the Secretariat had no objections, they would send them to the Ministry of Martial Arts. After the Ministry of Martial Arts verified the candidates, they would hand them over to the Empress to decide on the final candidates. Among them, there were restrictions on the monarch's authority and also restrictions on the monarch's authority. For officials of this level, even the Empress could only choose from the people appointed by the Secretariat. The Secretariat only had the right to recommend but not the right to decide. Of course, the past emperors all had their own trusted aides in the Secretariat. This way, many things were still decided by the monarch. Li Mu tidied up the memorials and sent them to Changle Palace. He placed them on the table in front of Zhou Yi and said, Your Majesty, these are the candidates for the Minister of Personnel, the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice, and the Minister of Works. The Secretariat has already chosen them. Please take a look. Zhou Yi flipped through the memorials on the top, picked up the red brush, and asked, "Who do you think is qualified for the position of Minister of Personnel?" Li Mu said, "This is a matter of great importance. Your subject does not dare to speak carelessly." Zhou Yi thought for a moment and was about to circle a name when Li Mu coughed softly. Zhou Yi paused. The tip of the brush brushed past that name and stopped above another name. Li Mu coughed again. The tip of the brush continued to slide down. Cough, cough, cough. After several coughs, when the tip of Zhou Yi's brush stopped at the last name, Li Mu finally stopped coughing. Zhou Yi circled the two words, Lu Qing. Li Mu smiled and said, "Your Majesty is wise. Although Lu Qing's qualifications are somewhat lacking, he does not form cliques and does not pursue personal interests. This can prevent one clique from controlling the court through the Ministry of Personnel and causing chaos in the court." After Zhou Yi circled Lu Qing's name, he handed the brush to Li Mu and said, "You can choose the rest." Li Mu took a step back and said, "Your Majesty, you cannot do this. If others know, they will think that your subject is taking advantage of your favor and interfering in the government. Your Majesty should choose." Zhou Yi glanced at him and said, "You are one of my people. Your thoughts are my thoughts. Tell me what you think." Li Mu no longer hid anything. He walked to her side and said, "Your subject knows that your Majesty does not want to be emperor and does not want to be trapped in the imperial palace. However, your subject believes that if your Majesty wants to leave the court, the first thing your Majesty should do is take control of the court. For these important positions, your Majesty should consider placing officials loyal to your Majesty and not officials from the old or new cliques." Zhou Yi said lightly, "Right now, I feel that there is nothing bad about being emperor." Li Mu lowered his head and glanced at her. Right now, she felt that being emperor was not bad because he had helped her do the things that an emperor should do. He had also helped her worry about the things that an emperor should worry about. Apart from showing her face at the morning court every 3 days, had she ever fulfilled any of the duties an emperor should have? Li Mu dared to complain about this in his heart. If he said it out loud, the empress might come to find him in his dreams tonight. Li Mu cleared his throat and said, "As for these candidates, I can give your Majesty some suggestions. The Minister of Personnel is Lu Qing. As for the 2 assistant ministers, one can be given to the Wang family. As for the other, I recommend Zhang Chun. Sir Zhang has always kept himself clean and has never been associated with the old or new cliques. As long as your Majesty gives him a house with 5 courtyards and a few maids, he will work for your Majesty. As for the Assistant Minister of Justice, I recommend the former Minister of Justice Yang Lin. Although he seems to be from the old clique, there is still room to rope him in. Letting him be the Assistant Minister of Justice can also appease the old clique and lessen their unbalanced mentality of losing the Ministry of Personnel. Finally, the Minister of Works. Although this position is not as important as the Minister of Personnel, it is best to have it in the hands of one of our own. For this position, I recommend the North County Governor, Chen Zhengyuan." After Zhou Zhong's matter, the 6 important positions were empty. This affected the hearts of countless people in the imperial court. To quickly calm the hearts of the people, the Secretariat immediately recommended a batch of officials to become the candidates for those important positions. Amongst them, who the 3 officials of the Ministry of Personnel would end up in was something that both the old and new cliques cared about. The final result would affect which party would control the Ministry of Personnel in the future, and influence the imperial court to the greatest extent. The Secretariat did not have to wait for long before the Changle Palace had a result. The current Assistant Minister of Rights, Lu Qing, was moved to the Minister of Personnel. Zhang Chun, Imperial Clan Temple Governor, was moved to the left Assistant Minister of Personnel. At the same time, he held the positions of Imperial Clan Temple Governor and Imperial Clan Temple Governor. Wang Xing was moved to the Ministry of Personnel as the right Assistant Minister. The Minister of Justice, Yang Lin, was promoted to Assistant Minister of Justice. The person who was chosen to be the Minister of Works was even more surprising. It was the North County Governor, Chen Zhengyuan. Very few people in the imperial court knew this name. Apart from the selection of the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice as expected, the final selection of the other important ministers were all shocking. The Secretariat. Looking at the name list that returned from Changle Palace, the names behind the few important positions were actually the officials that Li Mu used to make up the numbers. Xiao Ziyu and Zhou Xiong reacted at the same time. Not good. We fell into a trap again. Chapter 374. Xiao Ziyu and Zhou Xiong looked at each other. Only when they saw the name list did they realize that Li Mu had set a trap for them from the very beginning. He was best at hiding his true intentions. On the surface, he seemed to be doing it for the good of everyone, but behind his back, he had a secret that no one knew. When everyone was discussing the imperial examination system, Li Mu had made a huge contribution. Everyone thought that he was working for the Empress. No one expected that his series of actions, which seemed to be preparing for the imperial examination, was actually to trick the assistant minister of the secretariat, Cui Ming. Judging from the result, Li Mu was not trying to mediate between the two at all. His true motive was to promote his people to high positions and weaken the power of the two parties at the same time. I was careless. I forgot. This little fox is cunning. How could he do such a thing without a motive? At this moment, the two of them, who belonged to different camps, felt a sense of sympathy for each other and shared a common hatred for the enemy. However, in the next moment, the two of them snorted coldly at the same time and walked out of the secretariat. Not long after, in the southern park, Duke Manor of Nanyang. The veins on Duke Nanyang's forehead throbbed. He gritted his teeth and said, "That damned Li Mu. He won't let us have what he can't have." Xiao Ziyu thought for a while and said, "The most important thing is that the position of Minister of Personnel was not taken advantage of by the Zhou clan. Perhaps we can try to rope in Lu Qing. As far as I know, he hasn't been roped in by the Zhou clan." "That's because the Zhou clan can't rope him in," Duke Nanyang said in a deep voice. "Do you think we haven't tried to rope in Lu Qing? When he was promoted to Assistant Minister of Rights, we tried to rope him in, but he ignored us. In the past 9 years in the imperial court, he has always been a loner and doesn't get close to anyone. He goes straight home after leaving the court. I invited him to banquet several times, but he rejected me." Xiao Ziyu shook his head and said, "Such a person can actually become the Minister of Personnel." An important position like the Minister of Personnel had always been fought for by different factions. For an official who had no faction and no backing, it was already a stroke of luck for him to become an assistant minister. It was almost impossible to be promoted to a minister based on luck alone. The position of Minister of Personnel could no longer be forced. He could only helplessly say, "Fortunately, nothing has happened to the Ministry of Justice. The Department of Worship is also under our control." At the same time, in the study of the Zhou family's minister Zhou Zhong, the 4 Zhou brothers fell into silence. The Zhou family didn't suffer too many losses this time. Among the 6 ministries, the Ministry of Works had the least power. Thus, whether it was Zhou Ting's resignation as assistant minister or Zhou Chuan's dismissal, it didn't affect the Zhou family too much. The Xiao clan, on the other hand, had lost the Ministry of Personnel. Their lifeline had been cut off. However, this was not entirely good news for the Zhou family. In the past, the Empress didn't care much about the fight between the old party and the new party, and she wouldn't intervene. But now, she was deliberately suppressing the new party and the old party. This time, she appointed several important official positions, avoiding the officials of the new party and the old party. She intended to cultivate her own forces, which was more significant than suppressing the other 2 parties. Could it be that she's really cultivating her own forces? Zhou Chuan's face was full of doubt. He asked, "In the past, she only wanted to condense the next strand of Emperor's qi as soon as possible and pass down the throne. She didn't care much about the fight between the 2 parties. Could it be that her thinking has changed?" Zhou Ting said indifferently, "It's very possible. Ever since she began to favor Li Mu, she's changed more and more." Zhou Xiong said with incomparable certainty, "I'm very sure that Li Mu must be behind Her Majesty's actions. This time, from the beginning to the end, was a trap set by him. I suspect that he wants to support his own party. No matter what, Li Mu must be taken seriously." The Ministry of Rights. In the assistant minister's office, Lu Qing was packing his things. From tomorrow onwards, he would take up his post at the Ministry of Personnel as Minister of Personnel. The Minister of Rights walked into the office and clasped his hands in greeting. "Congratulations, Lord Lu. Lord Lu's promotion speed is really fast." Rather complicated emotions flowed in the depths of his eyes. In the short span of half a year, he had personally witnessed Lu Qing rise from a small minister counselor of the Ministry of Rights to a physician, assistant minister, and now, Lu Qing had become the Minister of Personnel. He held real power in his hands, and his status was firmly above his own. As Lu Qing's superior, He had mixed feelings. Lu Qing also sighed emotionally. Yes, I also didn't expect this place to rise so quickly. Northern Court. Li Mu stood at the entrance of his house, watching Zhang Chun move in. This time, not only had old Zhang been promoted, his residence had also been changed from 3 entrances to 4 entrances. In addition, the Empress had also rewarded his family with 2 servant girls and 2 servants. The distance between the Zhang residence and the Li residence had also become closer. At the housewarming banquet, he patted Li Mu on the shoulder and said, "Between us, there's no need to say anything unnecessary. Come, let's drink this cup." There weren't many people at the banquet. Other than Zhang Chun's family, there were also Zhang Shan, Li Si, Li Mu, and Li Qing. Since the last time he came to Luoyang, Zhang Shan hadn't gone back. He had never been to Luoyang before and was shocked by the prosperity of the streets. He had already asked Lu Hanyan for permission to open a branch here. Coincidentally, Lu Hanyan also had the same idea, so he stayed for the time being. After a few cups of wine, Zhang Shan looked at Li Qing and asked, "Boss, what do you plan to do next? Will you continue to stay in Luoyang?" Li Si kicked him under the table, but it was too late. Li Qing was silent for a moment, then said, "In 2 days, I should return to Mount Baiyun." Li Si's lips moved slightly. He wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't speak. He poured a cup of wine and said to Li Mu, "Here's to you." The wine cups clinked. He gave Li Mu a meaningful look and said, "You guys have gone through a lot of trouble to get to where you are today. You must cherish the people in front of you." Zhang Shan raised his wine cup and said, "That's right. You and the shopkeeper have gone through a lot of trouble to get together. You must cherish her in the future." Li Si poured another cup of wine and said to Li Qing, "Here's to you, boss. I hope you can think carefully before you make a decision in the future. Don't regret it in the future." Zhang Shan agreed and said, "That's right. If you hadn't killed those corrupt officials, this matter would have been much simpler. You wouldn't have to stay in the Imperial Clan Temple. They would still be beheaded in the end." Ever since Li Qing came to the house, Li Mu had been sleeping in the study with Xiao Bai in his arms every day. Not only that, on the second day after Li Qing came to Luoyang, Lu Hanyan removed all the festive decorations inside and outside the Li residence, including the big red lanterns at the door. According to the customs of Luoyang, the lanterns with the word happiness on them had to be hung for 3 months for the wedding celebration. He knew what Lu Hanyan meant. She was taking care of Li Qing's feelings. Li Qing's family had just passed away. For Li Qing, she chose to sacrifice herself. At night, Li Mu was about to enter the study when he saw a figure standing outside the room. Li Mu walked forward and asked in confusion, "Boss, why aren't you sleeping yet?" Li Qing said softly, "I wanted to tell you that I'm going back to Mount Baiyun to cultivate tomorrow. I'm sorry to have disturbed you for so long." Li Mu looked at her and said, "What's there to disturb? This is your home. I'm going to ask Her Majesty to let her bestow this residence to you again." Li Qing shook her head gently and said, "I don't have a home anymore. I think that if Father knew in the underworld that the one living in the Li residence was someone like him, he would be relieved." Li Mu thought for a moment and said, "Lord Li hasn't been avenged. I'll let you see with your own eyes that they receive the punishment they deserve." Li Qing finally looked nervous. She grabbed Li Mu's wrist and said, "You've done enough. Let's stop here. Father doesn't want anyone to avenge him. He only wants someone to be like him and do something for the people." Li Mu was about to explain to her, but he felt something and looked back. In front of the moon gate, a figure stood there quietly. Li Qing was stunned for a moment, then she let go of Li Mu's hand with a pale face and said, "Senior sister, I..." Lu Hanyan walked over and shook her head. "Junior sister, you don't need to explain. I heard everything." Li Qing lowered her head and said, "I hope senior sister can persuade him." Lu Hanyan glanced at Li Mu and said to Li Qing, "Junior sister should also understand him. He won't change his mind so easily." Li Mu said, "Don't worry." Her Majesty agreed. "There won't be any danger." Lu Hanyan said to Li Qing, "With Her Majesty protecting him, junior sister doesn't need to worry." Li Qing looked at Li Mu and didn't say anything. She said softly, "Then I'll go back to my room first. You should rest early." Lu Hanyan suddenly said, "Junior sister, wait a moment." Li Qing turned around and asked, "Senior sister, is there anything else?" Lu Hanyan said, "There's a question I want to ask junior sister." Li Qing said, "Senior sister, ask away." Lu Hanyan looked at her and asked, "Does junior sister also like Li Mu?" Chapter 375. Li Mu had already prepared to return to his room to sleep. When he heard Lu Hanyan's words, he suddenly quivered and hurriedly said, "What are you talking about?" Lu Hanyan glanced at him and said, "Men shouldn't interrupt when women are talking." A trace of nervousness and panic flashed in the depths of Li Qing's eyes. However, after she met Lu Hanyan's gaze, that trace of panic gradually turned into calmness and indifference. She remembered what Li Si said before she left Yangqiu County. Li Si said that in terms of relationships, it was always easier to take a step back than to take a step forward. If she took a step back now and regretted it in the future, she would have to take more than one step forward. By the time she regretted it, someone would have already walked in front of her. In fact, she regretted it, but it was already too late because someone had already walked in front of her. Li Qing looked at Lu Hanyan and said calmly, "Yes, I have liked him since a long time ago. However, senior sister, don't worry. I won't fight with you for anything. I will leave tomorrow morning." She wanted to deny it against her will, but if she denied it this time, she would never have the chance to say it again. Li Mu looked at Li Qing with an indescribable feeling in his heart. Lu Hanyan sighed softly and said, "Actually, the one who should leave is me. This is your home. The person he liked in the beginning was also you. I just took advantage of the situation." Li Qing shook her head and said, "This is my own choice. I should also bear the consequences. The person who has always been by his side is you. This is no longer my home. Its owner is you. I hope that the two of you can be united and grow old together." Lu Hanyan asked, "What about you?" Li Qing thought for a moment and said, "I will stay in Baiyun Mountain and repay the sect's kindness." Lu Hanyan was silent for a moment and said, "The one you should repay the most is not the sect, but a certain someone." Li Mu looked at Lu Hanyan. For a moment, he couldn't figure out her routine. Li Qing nodded and said, "If you need me to do anything, I won't refuse." Lu Hanyan looked at her and said, "Then give yourself to me." Li Qing looked at her with a stunned expression. Li Mu looked at her, dumbfounded. Li Qing came back to her senses and said in disbelief, What are you talking about?" Lu Hanyan's expression was melancholy, and her tone was somewhat helpless. She continued, "Although I don't want to share my husband with others, it's not that I can't accept it if that person is you. After all, you're in front of me. A man can't forget the first woman he likes in his entire life. While he's with other women, he still has to think about an outsider. Why not let him think about his own sisters? You're not the first, and you're not the only one." Li Qing's lips moved. Her thoughts were in a mess. Lu Hanyan looked at Li Qing and said, "Of course, you can also refuse. That way, I won't feel guilty towards you at all. It's not that I stole your husband. It's you who didn't want him, and you didn't want him twice. In the future, don't go around telling people that I, Lu Hanyan, am not moral." After Li Qing came back to her senses, her pale face had turned red. She whispered, Give me some time." After saying that, she quickly turned around and hurried into her room. Li Mu looked at Lu Hanyan in front of him and opened his mouth. Lu Hanyan glanced at him and said, "I'll give you an hour at most. Then come to my room." Seeing her turn around and leave, Li Mu was stunned for a long time. In the end, he pinched his thigh to make sure that what had just happened was not a dream. If this was not a dream, then happiness came too suddenly. After coming back to his senses, he slowly walked to the door of Li Qing's room. Her door was not closed. Li Mu walked in and saw her sitting on the edge of the bed with her head bowed. Li Mu did not say anything. He just silently walked to her side and sat down. The two of them sat in silence. After a while, Li Qing slowly leaned her head on Li Mu's shoulder. This was the closest she had been to Li Mu since they met. Li Qing softly said, "Actually, when we were in the Imperial Clan Temple, I wanted to lean on you like this." Li Mu put his arm around her shoulder and said, "You can lean on me for a lifetime." Li Qing did not say anything else. She quietly leaned on him for a while and then said, "Go to senior sister's place. Right now, she needs you more than I do." Li Mu nodded slightly and said, "I'll watch you rest." Li Qing lay on the bed and covered herself with the quilt. She looked at Li Mu and said, "Go." Li Mu walked out of her room and helped her close the door. Li Qing, who was lying on the bed, slowly opened her beautiful eyes and softly said, "Father, mother, did you see that? Qing also has someone to rely on." Li Mu walked into Lu Hanyan's room. Lu Hanyan was sitting on the bed. She did not raise her head and asked. She agreed. Li Mu did not answer. He walked to her side and asked, "Why did you?" Lu Hanyan unhappily said, "If I don't ask her, should I wait for you to ask her? At that time, the one who will be angry will be me. So why don't I ask her myself?" Li Mu said, "What I mean is, why did you suddenly do this?" Lu Hanyan looked at him and said, "It's not sudden. From the day she appeared in Chengdu, I thought about it. Your feelings for her are not something I can compare to. If you run away with her one day, what should I do?" Li Mu said indignantly, "What are you talking about? You are my legal wife. How can I run away with someone else?" Lu Hanyan asked, "So if you had to choose between her and me, who would you choose?" Li Mu thought for a while and asked tentatively, "Can I have them both?" "Hey, don't bite me." After a long time, Lu Hanyan leaned into Li Mu's arms and said, "Anyway, I already have Wan and Xiaobai. It doesn't matter if she has one more. If it was someone else, she could forget about marrying into the Li family. But she is Li Qing." She buried her head in Li Mu's chest and said, "Let me tell you, I have already married Li Qing for you. You can't abandon me for any reason in the future, any." As she spoke, her voice became softer. The calmness and confidence she had when facing Li Qing just now had disappeared. Li Mu's clothes were wet from her tears. At this moment, Li Mu finally understood what she had been worried about these days. The experience of being abandoned by her parents when she was young had caused her trauma. Even now it had not healed. Li Mu hugged her tightly and said seriously, "I will never abandon you, never." Changle Palace. Zhou Yi read several memorials. Suddenly she raised her head and asked, "Where is Li Mu? Didn't he go to the minister's department today? I didn't see him in the morning court." Mr. May said, "I really didn't see him today." Zhou Yi thought for a while and put down her brush. She said, "He didn't go to court for no reason. I want to see what he is doing." She flicked her finger and a picture appeared in front of her. In the picture, it seemed to be a street in Chengdu. The street was full of people. There was a beautiful woman on each side of Li Mu. He was holding the woman on the left and the woman on the right. Mr. May looked at the picture in front of him and said in surprise, "Isn't that woman Li Yi's daughter?" "He and Li Mu." Zhou Yi snorted and said, "I knew it. Their relationship is not that simple. He goes to Zongjing Temple every day more frequently than he comes to Changle Palace. He didn't want the palace maids I gave him before. I thought he didn't like women. Now it seems that all men in the world are the same," Mr. May said awkwardly. "He is so outstanding. Naturally, there are more people who like him. It's understandable that both parties are willing." Zhou Yi waved her hand to disperse the picture. She was a little annoyed. Li Mu had another wife. This meant that he would come to Changle Palace less often. It was only the first day, and he didn't even go to court. On the streets of Chengdu the people looked at the three figures in front of them and whispered, "Isn't that Li Yi? Who is he with?" The one on Li Yi's left is Madame Li. The one on the right seems to be Li Yi's daughter. Why is Li Yi holding her hand? Is there a need to ask? Li Yi overturned the case for Li Yi and saved Miss Li from prison. She was touched and wanted to marry him. It's normal. This is also a good story. It can be written into a play. They are a perfect match. No wonder Li Yi said he wouldn't let Li Yi have no descendants. So this is what he meant. Now, Li Yi really has a descendant. Chapter 376. In the past 3 days, Li Mu had developed a feeling that life was more beautiful than this. He even thought of resigning from his position and living in seclusion. Returning to Baiyun Mountain, he could focus on cultivation and enjoy the happiness of having 2 wives. Wouldn't that be perfect? The reason why he gave up on this idea was because he thought of the Empress. Even if he were to leave, it would be after helping the Empress clear all obstacles and repaying her for recognizing his worth. Of course, he also wanted to take revenge on his father-in-law. Although the case had caused a stir and the whole country knew about it, the outcome was not satisfactory. The main culprits were all pardoned by the death exemption medallion. Only one of them received the punishment he deserved. As for the other accomplices, the 3 provinces only fined them a few months of their salary to maintain the stability of the court. It seemed that the price of framing a fourth-rank official was only a few months of salary. As far as they were concerned, this matter was already over. But for Li Mu, it was just the beginning. He stretched out his hand. The ring on his finger flashed and a booklet appeared in his hand. It was the evidence of the crimes of some of the officials of the old party that Zhou Zhong had collected over the years. Most of these people were the ones who joined forces to frame Li Yi. As the assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice and deeply trusted by the old party, it was easy for him to use his position to collect the evidence. The crimes of these people varied. Li Mu took out a piece of paper and wrote down a series of names. After thinking for a while, he circled one of them. Wang Luan, who was the minister of the Ministry of Personnel at that time, was the one who submitted many memorials asking for Li Qing to be severely punished. Li Mu was not holding a grudge, but there were so many people that he had to start with. He left the secretariat, walked out of the palace gate, and walked toward the Ministry of Justice. In the assistant minister's office of the Ministry of Justice, Yang Lin leaned comfortably on a chair and sighed in his heart. He had thought that he would have to endure for many more years to reach the position of assistant minister before he retired. But who would have thought that the Ministry of Justice would undergo such a great change? Countless people were eyeing the position, but in the end, he took advantage of it. Yang Lin's gaze inadvertently looked out of the window. A figure flashed by outside the window. Yang Lin immediately stood up from his chair and walked to the door. Lord Li, do you have any instructions for the Ministry of Justice? Although his rank was already higher than Li Mu's, in the imperial court, rank did not represent everything. In front of Li Mu, he still maintained his respect and humility. Li Mu handed him a document and said, "There is a case here. The Ministry of Justice should deal with it as soon as possible." The Central Secretariat had to do with national policies or important decisions. They needed to be reviewed by the Minister of Ceremonies and the Minister of Ceremonies to guide the 6 ministries in their implementation. For such small matters, the Central Secretariat officials had the power to directly order the Ministry of Justice. Yang Lin took the document. After reading it, he said in shock, "This is the Ministry of Personnel's physician, Lord Wang Luan." Li Mu looked at him and asked, "Why? Does the Ministry of Justice's handling of cases vary from person to person?" Yang Lin quickly replied, "Of course not." Li Mu said, "I believe that Lord Yang will be a good official. Otherwise, I wouldn't have urged His Majesty to let you be the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice." Yang Lin was stunned. He had thought that his appointment as the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice was due to the efforts of the old faction. He was still puzzled as to why the old faction did not get a single official position in the Ministry of Personnel, but he succeeded in the Ministry of Justice. Only now did he know that his promotion was not because of the old faction, but because of Li Mu. He immediately clasped his hands and said, "Thank you, Lord Li." Li Mu waved his hand and said, "No need to thank me. His Majesty felt that Lord Yang was not too far off the path and wanted to give you a chance." Yang Lin stood where he was. His gaze gradually became hesitant. He knew that at this moment, he was faced with an important choice in his life. Should he continue to work for the old faction, or should he completely side with Li Mu? The old faction was controlled by the Xiao clan, and the Xiao clan was the legitimate royal family of Great Zhou. Even though the Zhou clan was extremely powerful, they were not the legitimate royal family. Many officials in the court and the people of Great Zhou were inclined towards the empress returning the throne to the Zhou clan. Therefore, even though the old faction had been suppressed by the new faction in recent years, they were still powerful and did not lack supporters. He worked for the old faction because he believed that the Xiao clan would regain power sooner or later. However, what reason did he have to work for Li Mu? His Majesty could not pass the throne to Li Mu, or Li Mu's children. Yang Lin did not dare to make a rash decision when it concerned his future and even his life. He looked at Li Mu and probed, "Lord Li, may I ask if His Majesty intends to pass the throne to the Zhou clan in the future?" Li Mu glanced at him and asked, "Is this something that you and I as subjects can discuss?" Yang Lin looked troubled. Li Mu knew what he was worried about. He said, "Are you afraid that the Xiao clan will come after you if His Majesty passes the throne to the Xiao clan?" Yang Lin said, "Lord Li, I have elders and children to take care of. I cannot afford to gamble. If I gamble wrongly, the lives of my family." Li Mu asked, "When do you think His Majesty will pass the throne to the Xiao clan?" Yang Lin shook his head and said, "I don't know." Li Mu said slowly, "His Majesty is a powerhouse of the 7th realm. He can live for at least 3 decades. She is in her prime now. Even if the throne is to be passed, it will be decades or even centuries later. Do you think you can live until then? Yang Lin thought for a moment and felt that Li Mu's words seemed to make sense. By that time, he would have retired and returned to his hometown to enjoy the rest of his life. It would have nothing to do with him who would inherit the throne. However, he still did not dare to gamble. He asked Li Mu nervously, "His Majesty won't pass the throne early, right?" Li Mu glanced at him and said, "Do you think His Majesty will suddenly pass the throne?" Yang Lin looked at Li Mu in a daze, seeming to understand something. If it was said that His Majesty had such thoughts in the past, he would not find it strange. In the past, His Majesty did not care about the court at all. He did not care about the struggles between the old and new parties. He let nature take its course. However, the appointments of the officials from the Ministry of Personnel and the Ministry of Justice showed that His Majesty was already deliberately suppressing the old and new parties and taking back power. Could it be that His Majesty had other thoughts? Li Mu looked at him and said, "I know that it is very difficult for Lord Yang to make a decision. I will give you 3 days to think about it. After 3 days, whether we are friends or enemies will depend on your choice." Yang Lin's expression was bitter. Did he have any other choice? Although Li Mu did not have many friends in the court, he was really good to his friends. In just half a year, Zhang Chun had been promoted from the Divine Capital Commandant to the left assistant minister of the Ministry of Personnel. He was a real minister with real power. The residence he lived in also went from 2, 3, and now 4. He was about to live in a large residence with 5 entrances. For Yang Lin, who lived in a small house with 2 entrances for 3 generations, a residence with 5 entrances was an unattainable dream. On the other hand, Li Mu's enemies were either dead or demoted. Those who were lucky enough to survive lost their positions and reputation. Yang Lin did not doubt that if he became Li Mu's enemy, he would not even be able to live in a small house with 2 entrances in less than a month. The prison of the Ministry of Justice was perhaps the best outcome. If it was a little worse, he might only have a few coffin planks to block the dirt. After careful consideration, Yang Lin let out a long sigh. Then, his expression gradually turned solemn. He looked at Li Mu and said seriously, "From now on, this humble official will follow Lord Li's lead." Li Mu did not misjudge him. The person he supported did not disappoint him. Not long after, a few constables from the Ministry of Justice hurried out of the Ministry of Justice's main gate. They came to a certain entertainment market and grabbed a certain noble from a brothel. "Which yamen are you from? How dare you arrest me? Do you know who I am? Do you know who my father is?" "The Ministry of Justice. The current Assistant Minister of Justice is my father's friend. Let me go. Once you get to the Ministry of Justice, you will suffer." The noble made a lot of noise along the way. The constables from the Ministry of Justice could not take it anymore and used a rag to gag his mouth. The people along the way found out that the noble had been summoned by the Ministry of Justice because of an old case. "This is the son of Lord Wang of the Ministry of Personnel. Why is the Ministry of Justice arresting them? Aren't the Ministry of Personnel and the Ministry of Justice on the same side?" That was in the past. Now, the minister and assistant minister of the Ministry of Personnel have changed. The Ministry of Personnel's assistant minister hasn't changed. He has some ties with the current assistant minister of Justice. Could it be that their relationship has broken? The people always like to watch the drama between officials and nobles. They followed along the way. Ministry of Personnel. It was lunchtime. A few officials from the Ministry of Personnel walked out together and prepared to eat at a restaurant. When they passed by the Ministry of Justice, they saw a large group of people gathered outside the Ministry of Justice. They were discussing and pointing inside. One of the officials from the Ministry of Personnel lamented, "The Ministry of Justice is really busy. They can't even rest during lunchtime." Another official from the Ministry of Personnel said, "When we were on our way here, we heard from the people that some official's son was arrested. The Ministry of Justice took him out of the brothel directly. It seems like the crime is not small." When they heard that some official's son had committed a crime, the officials from the Ministry of Personnel were instantly interested in watching the drama. The Ministry of Personnel's physician Wang Luan chuckled and said, "I wonder which family's son is from. He keeps causing trouble for his elders. It's time to teach him a lesson." He looked into the Ministry of Justice's main hall and saw a figure kneeling in the hall. The figure looked so familiar. One of the officials said in surprise, "Lord Wang, isn't this your..." Wang Luan was stunned for a moment. Then, his face gradually darkened. He did not expect that he would be involved in the drama. Chapter 377. Under the curious gazes of several officials from the Ministry of Personnel, Wang Luan strode into the Ministry of Justice. He met Yang Lin at the Assistant Minister's office. Wang Luan looked at Yang Lin and frowned. "Lord Yang, what's going on?" Yang Lin said helplessly. "You'll have to ask young Master Wang. 3 years ago, he pursued a married woman. In order to force the woman to submit, he beat her husband until he was severely injured. In the end, he even used his power to fabricate a crime and sent her husband to prison. Today, the Ministry of Justice has ordered the Ministry of Justice to reopen the case. After the Ministry of Justice investigated, they found that it was true." Wang Luan gritted his teeth. "Wasn't the case from 3 years ago already closed?" Yang Lin said, "Although the case from 3 years ago was closed, the Ministry of Justice felt that the Ministry of Justice had handled the case unfairly and requested a retrial. I couldn't do anything about it." Wang Luan asked, "Can't the original verdict be upheld?" Yang Lin shook his head. "No." The Ministry of Justice was dissatisfied with the original verdict, so they decided to reopen the case. If the Ministry of Justice still doesn't change it, then I'll be the unlucky one." Wang Luan said angrily, "Why do you have to reopen the case from 3 years ago?" Yang Lin looked at him. "You'll have to ask Lord Wang about this?" Wang Luan was stunned. "Ask me? What's wrong with me?" Yang Lin sighed and said, "That day, I told you not to meddle in that matter, but you sent several memorials in a row, insisting that Li Yi's daughter be killed. Now, that woman has become one of Li Mu's lovers. If he doesn't take revenge on you, who else can he take revenge on?" Wang Luan said, "I didn't follow the royal prince's orders," Yang Lin said. "That's why your son is here today." Wang Luan took a deep breath and asked, "Then what will happen to my son?" Yang Lin shook his head. "It's hard to say. He caused serious injuries, slandered and framed innocent people, and sent them to prison. He'll be punished for several crimes. Your Wang family might have to pay a lot of money. You won't be able to avoid prison," Wang Luan said. "I know that the law can be bent. Lord Yang, with our relationship, you have to help me." Yang Lin thought for a moment and said, "You can ask Manager Wei to defend your son. He is the most familiar with the law in the Ministry of Justice. Perhaps he can help your son fight for a reduced sentence." A moment later, in a certain office of the Ministry of Justice, Wang Luan held Wei Peng's hand and said, "Manager Wei, I'll leave my son to you. After the matter is completed, I will definitely reward you handsomely." Wei Peng nodded and said, "I'll try my best." With that, he slowly walked into the courtroom. Wang Luan asked Yang Lin, "How will the Ministry of Justice judge him this time?" Yang Lin thought for a moment then said, "Inflicting serious injuries and setting someone up to be imprisoned for 3 years. The fine is at least 200 taels of silver, and this is under the condition that the other party is willing to forgive you. In addition, at least 5 years of imprisonment is unavoidable. As for how much you can reduce, it will depend on Manager Wei's performance." About 15 minutes later, Wei Peng slowly walked out of the court. Wang Luan asked, "What were the results?" Wei Peng said, "Forget it." Wang Luan was pleasantly surprised. "His sentence has been waived?" Wei Peng said, "The fine is waived. He was only sentenced to 20 years of imprisonment." Wang Luan was stunned for a moment. When he came to his senses, he grabbed Wei Peng's collar and said through clenched teeth, "What did you say? Just how did you argue?" Yang Lin hurriedly said, "Lord Wang, watch your actions." "Your actions." He had just finished speaking when several figures walked into the Ministry of Justice. They looked at Wang Luan and asked, "Are you the director of the Ministry of Personnel, Wang Luan?" Wang Luan was furious. He said unhappily, "I am." "Who are you people?" Crack. 2 of them pressed down on Wang Luan's arms. Another person put shackles on his wrists and said, "The Imperial Clan Temple has investigated. In the past few years, you have abused your power for personal gain many times. When evaluating officials, you were severely unfair. In addition, in order to get your son off the hook, you used your position as the director of the Ministry of Personnel to put pressure on the Ministry of Justice. This is also a serious violation of the law. Come with us to the Imperial Clan Temple." Wang Luan said in horror, "What are you saying? I am an official of the imperial court. You have no right to do this. You still know that you are an official of the imperial court? The official from the imperial clan temple glanced at him. He waved his hand and said, knowingly breaking the law. This is an additional charge. Take him away. Seeing Wang Luan being taken away, Yang Lin sighed and said, I told you long ago not to stand up for others when you shouldn't. You just wouldn't listen. Outside the Ministry of Justice, the officials from the Ministry of Personnel were dumbfounded. Everything was fine in the morning. They had just come out for lunch and the director was taken away. The onlooking commoners were also discussing. This family, both the father and son were arrested. What a sin. The father committed a sin, and the son committed an even greater sin. They could have been released after a few years as compensation. Now, they have been locked up for 20 years. When will they be released? Manager Wei's defense is really amazing. This is nothing. Just last month, there was a murderer who was sentenced to be banished to the army. His family spent a lot of money to hire Manager Wei to defend him. Guess what happened? What happened? He was just executed yesterday. In a room on duty in the Ministry of Justice, Wei Peng was writing a file. Yang Lin stood in front of the table and asked, You have a grudge with Wang Luan's son, right? Wei Peng nodded and said, We had a conflict before. Yang Lin said, Be careful in the future. It's best not to bring personal grudges into official matters. Wei Peng said, This official understands. Yang Lin shook his head and left. Because of the delay just now, the brush in Wei Peng's hand had been suspended in the air for too long. A drop of ink fell onto the half-finished file and quickly dyed it red, leaving behind a blob of ink. Wei Peng looked at the blob of ink and said in a low voice, Come back. The blob of ink on the file quickly shrank and formed a blob of ink. It floated in the air and landed back on the brush. The paper was as clean as new. Compared to the demotion of the Minister of Personnel and the left and right assistant ministers, the imprisonment of a mere director of the Ministry of Personnel did not attract much attention. However, to the officials of the old party, this matter was worth paying attention to. Times had changed. In the past, they were in charge of the Ministry of Personnel. However, the director of the Ministry of Personnel was now the highest-ranking official in the Ministry of Personnel. Losing one of the two directors of the Ministry of Personnel was a great loss to them. In a certain residence in the southern courtyard, a secret meeting was taking place. Why did something suddenly happen to Wang Luan? I've asked Yang Lin. He's under the orders of the Secretariat. It should be Li Mu who's behind this. Wang Luan once received my order to persuade the imperial court to execute Li Mu's daughter. Now, I heard that Li Yi's daughter is living in Li Mu's house and is very close to him. Perhaps she has already become his woman. He's taking revenge. After a long silence, someone sighed and said in an unwilling tone, In my opinion, we shouldn't provoke Li Mu for the time being. He has the Empress protection and doesn't reveal any flaws. We can't do anything to him and there's no need to fight to the death with him. Don't forget that we only have one opponent. As long as we defeat the Zhou family, no one will be a threat to us. Someone sighed and said, Now, I'm afraid it's not about whether we should provoke Li Mu or not, but whether he should provoke us. If Li Yi's daughter is already his woman, then Li Yi is his father-in-law. It's very likely that he wants to avenge Li Yi. Hasn't he already overturned the verdict for Li Yi? Overturning the verdict is not revenge. Judging from Wang Luan's case, this person will seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Since he took action against Wang Luan so quickly, I'm afraid he won't let the others off easily. As soon as he finished speaking, someone knocked on the door from outside. He walked over and opened the door. A servant whispered a few words to him. When he walked into the room, his face was very gloomy. He said, In addition to the left physician of the Ministry of Personnel, Wang Luan, the right physician of the Ministry of Personnel, Shui Yan, was also taken away by the people of the Imperial Clan Temple. Pa! Preposterous! Commandery Prince Nanyang slapped the table and stood up abruptly. He said angrily, What is he trying to do? In the Li residence, Li Mu held Li Qing's hand and said, Those people from back then, don't even think about escaping. Lu Hongyan glanced at Li Mu and coughed softly. Li Qing let go of Li Mu's hand in a panic. Although the three of them had reached a tacit understanding on some matters, she was much more thin-skinned. In a situation where there was a third person present, She was still not used to being intimate with Li Mu. Li Mu held Li Qing's hand in his left hand and Lu Hanyan's hand in his right. It was not easy to enjoy the happiness of having two wives. If they could not be impartial, it was only a matter of time before the harem caught fire. Lu Hanyan looked at Li Qing and asked Li Mu, "When do you plan to officially welcome her into the Li residence? We have to prepare in advance." Li Qing shook her head and said, "There's no need to go through so much trouble." Although Lu Hanyan and Li Qing were both women, their understanding of marriage was completely different. Lu Hanyan's heart was still that of a secular woman. She hoped to have a romantic and ritualistic wedding. Li Qing entered the Fulu school when she was very young. She had the carefree and casual nature of a cultivator. When cultivators practiced dual cultivation, as long as the two of them were willing, they could enter the bridal chamber at that time and skip all the tedious procedures. Lu Hanyan shook her head and said, "That won't do. If others know, they will think that I have mistreated you," Li Qing insisted. "There's really no need. As long as the three of us can be together forever, that's enough." "Three?" Lu Hanyan looked at Li Qing and seemed to realize something. She looked at her with a strange expression and asked, "Junior sister, you don't think that Wan Wan and Xiao Bai are just our maids, do you?" Chapter 378. Li Qing went back to her room alone to calm down. Lu Hanyan had a gloating expression on her face. Li Mu smacked her butt and said, "You did it on purpose, didn't you?" Lu Hanyan smiled and said, "I just wanted her to experience my feelings. Besides, she will find out sooner or later. If I don't tell her, will you tell her yourself?" The eldest madam of the Li family did it for revenge. Because of Li Qing, she had cried a lot in the past. Li Qing had wronged her, so she wanted to use Wan Wan and Xiao Bai to take revenge. She was still the petty Lu Hanyan. But she was also the Lu Hanyan that Li Mu liked. For many things, it was more appropriate for her to speak to Li Qing than Li Mu. After thinking this through, Li Mu put his arm around her and rubbed the place where he had just hit her. He said, "Does it hurt?" Lu Hanyan blushed and slapped his hand away. She said, "Behave yourself. Wan Wan and Xiao Bai are still over there." Li Mu looked over. The two girls who were sitting together on the swing immediately covered their faces with their hands. Their eyes peeked through the gaps between their fingers. Li Mu moved his hand away and said angrily, "Children shouldn't poke their noses into adult affairs. I'm not a child anymore." I'm not a child anymore," Wan Wan and Xiao Bai tried to defend themselves. Li Mu waved his hand and said, Go back to your room to play." Although they were not young in some areas, they were still under 18 years old. As long as they were not over 18 years old, in Li Mu's eyes, they were different from Lu Hanyan and Li Qing. Li Mu could hold Xiao Bai's original body, but as long as she transformed, he would feel guilty. Wan Wan was the same. She had not changed much in the past 2 years. She was still greedy and playful. The only change was that her eyes were more seductive. As long as one looked into her eyes, one's soul would be sucked in. Little White and Wan Wan were soul seducers and soul catchers respectively. When the two beauties worked together, even Li Mu could not withstand them sometimes. Li Qing was alone in the room. Lu Hanyan was full of satisfaction after getting her revenge. She went to the great music bar to find her friends. She planned to buy the whole place and was discussing the price with the owner. Li Mu had nothing to do, so he watched Wan Wan and Xiao Bai play aeroplane chess in the courtyard. Before the game, they had agreed that the loser would have to warm the bed next time Li Mu slept in the study. Li Mu watched for almost an hour. They were still playing aeroplane chess. While he was bored to death, something in the space of the flask heaven suddenly moved. Li Mu stretched out his hand, and the spiritual snail appeared in his hand. "Come to the Changle Palace." Only this sentence came from the spiritual snail, and then there was no more sound. In the past few days, he couldn't even take care of his family. He was immersed in his women and completely forgot about the Empress. 15 minutes later, Li Mu appeared in the Changle Palace. He bowed and asked, "Your Majesty, what are your orders?" The Empress threw him a token and said, "From now on, you are the deputy commander of the bamboo guards. You will be in charge of the bamboo guards together with Ali." The Empress had 4 internal guards. Their names were Mei, Lon, Zhu, and Ju. The 4 guards had different names, and their functions were also different. The Mei guards were in Shen. They were in charge of monitoring the officials. The commander was Mr. Mei. The lawn guards were scattered in various counties. Their job was to monitor the local officials. Li Mu had never seen their commander before. The bamboo guards were a special operation organization. They were in charge of carrying out special tasks, such as investigating rebels under the Empress orders. The commander was Shangguan Li. The Jew guards were the most mysterious of the 4 guards. It was said that they were in charge of intelligence. They had spies in the demon nation, the ghost realm, and even the demon sect. Li Mu took the token and didn't waste any time. He said, "Yes, Your Majesty." He was very clear about his position. He was a brick. He would be wherever the Empress wanted him to be. However, the Empress had inexplicably summoned him here and only gave him a token. After that, there was nothing else. She could have asked Lord May to pass this token to him. There was no need for her to make a special trip. After taking the token, Li Mu didn't stay for long. He walked out of Chang'an Palace and said to Shangguan Li, "Commander Shangguan, I have other things to do during this time. I'll need you to take care of the bamboo guards." Shangguan Li said lightly, "When you're not here, I'm the only one in charge of the bamboo guards." Since Shangguan Li didn't have any objections, Li Mu could focus on his own matters. After leaving Chang'an Palace, he went straight back to Chang'an Palace. Zhou looked at the pile of memorials on the table and said, "Look, there's only one more woman by their side, and they don't even care about national affairs. They don't go to the imperial kitchen, and they don't come to Chang'an Palace. I should forbid them from taking concubines." Seeing that the Empress's attitude towards Li Mu was becoming more and more strange, Mr. May's face was bitter, but he couldn't say anything. In the Imperial Secretariat, Li Mu sneezed for no reason and crossed out 2 names on the list on the table. Lu Yi walked in from outside and put a few oranges on the table in front of Li Mu. He smiled and said, "Sir Li, these are oranges from my hometown. Although they're not as sweet and delicious as the tribute oranges, they still taste pretty good. You can take them back and try them." Zhongjuan didn't produce oranges. In the past, there were people who transplanted them and used their mana to carefully cultivate them. However, the fruit was small and bitter, so no one tried it again. This kind of fruit was usually transported from the southern counties. The price was ridiculously high, and it wasn't something that ordinary people could afford. Li Mu smiled and said, "Thank you, Sir Lu." Lu Yi had eaten Li Mu's tribute oranges before, so he only came to return the favor. He said, "You're welcome." He was about to leave when he saw a piece of paper on Li Mu's table. He asked, "What's this?" Li Mu said casually, "Oh, this. I have nothing to do, so I practice writing." "Sir Li is really elegant." Louis smiled and complimented him. He left Li Mu's office, but he couldn't help but be curious. Who would practice writing using a person's name? Wang Luan, Qian Long, seemed to be the left and right doctors of the Ministry of Rights. The names after that, Ai Tong, Wu Shang, Chen Guang, sounded familiar. They seemed to be the officials of the Imperial Court. Morning Court. A few days ago, the Imperial Court was in turmoil, and there was a big change that hadn't been seen for many years. Today, the change that affected countless officials finally calmed down. The Morning Court regained its tranquility. But soon, some officials found that the court today seemed to be too quiet, as if there were suddenly a lot of people missing. Some of the officials looked around and saw that there were indeed some empty seats in front, behind, left, and right. In the Ziwei Palace, the positions of the officials were fixed. The 3 provinces, 6 ministries, and 9 temples. The ministers, assistant ministers, doctors, ministers, and junior ministers all had their own positions. These positions were fixed. Every morning, it was clear who was absent. Today, there were many gaps in the neat line of officials. There were no empty seats for officials above the 4th rank in front of the palace. But starting from the middle of the palace, there were more empty seats for officials. There was almost 1 empty seat for every 2 people. In total, there were more than 20 officials who didn't come to the morning court today. Even if they asked for leave, it was impossible for 20 officials to ask for leave at the same time. Moreover, the officials in those officials' offices didn't have the approval of their superiors. What's going on? Where did Lord Ai go? Why didn't Lord Wu come? Lord Chen just took a concubine yesterday. Did he get up late? Lord Wang and Lord Qian didn't come. Lord Wang and Lord Qian were arrested yesterday. What happened to the others? Were they arrested too? Ai Tong, Wu Shang, Chen Guang. Lu Yi stood in front and listened to the officials' discussion behind him. He was a little confused. The names of these absent officials sounded familiar, as if he had seen them somewhere. Soon, he remembered where this inexplicable sense of familiarity came from. Weren't these people the officials Li Mu used to practice calligraphy? But even if Li Mu used their names to practice calligraphy, it shouldn't be to the extent that they disappeared. Could it be that he wasn't practicing calligraphy, but using a divine ability? He had never heard of a divine ability that could make people disappear just by writing their names. Combined with the strange situation in the court, Lu Yi quickly understood. That piece of paper wasn't used by Li Mu to practice calligraphy. It was a list of names. On that list were the names of the former Right Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Personnel, Gao Hong, the former Minister of the Ministry of Personnel, Duke of Nanyang, Xiao Yun. Lu Yi finally realized something and was shocked. He turned around to look at Li Mu. Li Mu grinned at him. Lu Yi immediately turned around and broke out in cold sweat. His mind was racing. His name didn't seem to be on that list. It shouldn't be. He even treated Li Mu to oranges. Southern Court. Gao Residence. Early in the morning, the gatekeeper of the Gao residence was taking a nap in the side room. Ever since his master was stripped of his official position, although fewer people came to the residence, he no longer needed to attend morning court. In the past, he would have to wake up early to open the door at this time. It wasn't like today, where he could still laze around and take a nap at this time. To him, it was a good thing that his master was in trouble. Being able to sleep in the morning made life even better. Bang, bang, bang. While he was daydreaming, there was a sudden rush of knocking on the door. The gatekeeper was pleasantly surprised. After a shiver, he was no longer sleepy. He walked to the door and shouted angrily, "Why are you knocking so early in the morning when someone died in the house?" This person was extremely rude when knocking on the door. Normal people would pay attention to the gentle knocks and pauses when knocking on the door. Only those who were announcing a death would knock so quickly. The knocking stopped and a voice came from outside. "I'm here to visit Lord Gao." Hearing the words "I'm here," the gatekeeper was already looking down on him. His anger hadn't subsided and he asked coldly, "Do you have something to say?" The person outside was stunned for a moment, then said, No," the gatekeeper said coldly. "If you don't have an appointment, bring the invitation when you do." The person outside said, "But I really have something urgent." The gatekeeper said, "No matter how urgent it is, you still have to make an appointment. This is Lord Gao's rule." The person outside the door said, "Can you make an exception?" The gatekeeper said rudely, "I can't make an exception." The person outside the door finally became angry and said coldly, "If you can't make an exception, then forget it. Men, prepare the explosive talismans." Chapter 379. Boom! The 2 explosive talismans pasted on the gates of the Gao mansion exploded under the control of his transcendence energy. With a loud bang, the 2 gates of the Gao mansion collapsed. The gatekeeper of the Gao mansion stood in the courtyard and stared at the collapsed gates in a daze. His mind was blank. His master was a respected figure in the fairy's capital. Even if he was no longer the assistant minister of the Ministry of Personnel, he was still the elder brother of concubine Gao, a relative of the royal family. Who would be so bold as to blow up the gates of the Gao mansion? Zhang Chun stood outside the gate and waved at the officials of the imperial clan temple. "Follow me in and arrest the guilty official." The loud noise at the gates had already alerted the people of the Gao mansion. In a split second, more than 10 maids and servants rushed out from various places. As soon as they arrived at the front courtyard, they saw the collapsed gates of the Gao mansion. The former Right Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Personnel, Gao Hong, rushed out of the inner court. Seeing that the main gate of his residence had been blasted open, he was enraged. He glared at Zhang Chun, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets as he snapped, "Zhang, what are you doing?" Gao Hong hated Zhang Chun to the core. Not only because Zhang Chun took his position as the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Personnel, but also because Zhang Chun was Li Mu's #1 lackey. If you hated someone, you would naturally hate everything about that person, including his lackeys. Zhang Chun looked at Gao Hong and said calmly, "There is a case that requires you to go to the Imperial Clan Temple. However, your gatekeeper refused to cooperate, so I can only take forceful measures." The gatekeeper of the Gao mansion hid in a corner, trembling and not daring to raise his head. Gao Hong held back his anger and asked, What case? Zhang Chun said. You'll know when you get there. Gao Hong said coldly. No matter what, I'm still the royal uncle. You don't have the right to summon me. If you want to summon me, show me the official seal of the Imperial Clan Temple. Zhang Chun looked at a minor official of the Imperial Clan Temple and asked, Is there such a thing? The minor official nodded and said, Lord Gao's sister is the son of the former emperor's concubine Gao of the Western Palace. To summon a member of the royal family or a relative of the emperor, you need the seal of the Imperial Clan Temple Master. Indeed, Lord Gao does not have this authority. Zhang Chun looked at Gao Hong and said, You want the abbot's seal, right? Wait a moment. I'll be right back. Gao Hong's face darkened as he watched Zhang Chun leave with his men. Since Zhang Chun dared to come knocking on his door, he must have gotten hold of something that could be used against him. He couldn't figure it out at the moment. As he walked out of the main gate of the Gao mansion, Zhang Chun looked back and said, Before I return, you are not allowed to go anywhere. If you leave the Gao mansion by 10 feet, you will be considered a fugitive. The Imperial Clan Court can arrest you or execute you. Gao Hong's face darkened, but he still retracted his foot. He walked back to the Gao mansion and said to a servant, Go to the royal prince's mansion of Nanyang and inform the royal prince of this. On the way back to the Zongjing temple, Zhang Chun muttered, The Gao manor doesn't look small. There should be 5 entrances, right? A minor official beside him said, The Gao residence is a standard 7-sectioned mansion. 7. Zhang Chun thought about how his mansion only had 4 entrances, and there were only 2 maids and 2 servants. Just now in the Gao residence, there were almost 20 maids and servants who rushed out in an instant. Zhang Chun's heart was filled with envy. At this moment the minor official continued, That's nothing. The royal prince of Nanyang's mansion is the bigger one. It has 10 entrances and 10 entrances. He has 13 wives and concubines, and each of them has their own independent courtyard. Each of them has a senior maid and 4 junior maids. There are artificial mountains, ponds, and beautiful pavilions in the mansion. Zhang Chun thought about his dream of living in a 5-section mansion before he retired. He shook his head and said, The layout is too small. The group walked through the palace gates and returned to the Zongjing temple. They didn't know that the imperial court was in an uproar. The number of officials in the imperial court was mysteriously reduced by more than 20. The morning court could no longer be held. Some officials even guessed that the powerhouses of the demon sect had sneaked into the fairies' capital and killed these officials to create chaos in the imperial court. After that, Mr. May clarified that the demon sect had nothing to do with this. Last night, it was the Zongjing Temple's deputy minister, Zhang Chun, who led the Zongjing Temple's people to arrest the guilty officials. He told the officials not to worry. It would have been better if Mr. May didn't clarify. After he did, the officials became even more worried. What? These officials were all arrested? More than 20 people were all arrested and sent to the Zongjing Temple? What's going on? Are we in trouble too? 20 officials of the imperial court had been arrested in one night. Without knowing the reason, all the officials in the Great Hall felt threatened, especially those who were close to these 2. They were even more frightened. At some point, an official seemed to realize something. He mumbled, These people are all accomplices in Li Yi's case. His words woke everyone up. The officials counted the people who were absent today, and were shocked to find that all of them were related to Li Yi's case. A few days ago, when Li Mu overturned Li Yi's case, they were accomplices. However, they didn't receive any heavy punishment. They were only fined a few months to a year's salary. Everyone thought that it was the end. They didn't expect that it was just the beginning. Without any warning, those officials were all caught in one fell swoop overnight. Zhang Chun, the left assistant minister of the Ministry of Personnel, who was also the Zongjing Temple's deputy minister, did it himself. There was no need to guess who was behind this. Zhang Chun was Li Mu's #1 henchman. He always fought for Li Mu in the imperial court. He must have been allowed to do this by Li Mu. Obviously, Li Mu didn't just want to overturn Li Yi's case. He also wanted to avenge Li Yi. As for the reason, everyone knew very well. Everyone in Fairy's capital knew that Li Yi's daughter was one of Li Mu's lovers. Not only did she live in his house, but they often walked hand in hand when they went out. They were very close. Li Mu overturned Li Yi's case because Li Yi was wronged and died. He wanted to avenge Li Yi because Li Yi was his father-in-law. Everyone's gaze shifted to where Li Mu was, only to find that there was no one there. Li Mu didn't even come to the imperial court today. Nonsense, this is simply nonsense. The left servant walked out and said in a deep voice, "What is the imperial court trying to do by arresting more than 20 officials for no reason?" Many people looked at Prince Xiao in front. Prince Xiao shook his head and said, "Don't look at me. I don't know anything." Some people in the imperial court shook their heads and sighed. Prince Xiao was a prince and the head of the imperial court. He couldn't even control a minister. He was useless, Mr. Mei said. Yesterday, before Zhang Chun brought people to arrest them, he said that the imperial court has enough evidence. The left servant said with a dark face, "What evidence does he have to arrest more than 20 officials?" Mr. Mei said faintly, "The inner guards don't interfere with the imperial court. If you want to know, you just have to summon Zhang Chun to the imperial court." He turned to look at Shangguan Li. Shangguan Li walked to the curtain and came out after a while. She said, "Summon Zhang Chun." Crepe Myrtle Palace was only a few hundred steps away from the imperial court. He quickly walked into the imperial court in half a cup of tea's time. Mr. Mei looked at the left servant and said, "If you have any questions, you can ask Lord Zhang directly." The left servant looked at Zhang Chun and asked coldly, "Assistant Minister Zhang, you arrested more than 20 officials in the middle of the night and caused chaos in the imperial court. Shouldn't you give His Majesty and the imperial court an explanation?" Zhang Chun said, "The imperial court has evidence to arrest people. May I ask what explanation you want?" The left servant said in a low voice, "What crime did the Minister-Counselor of the Ministry of Revenue, Ai Tong, commit that you want to arrest him?" Zhang Chun said, "The Minister-Counselor of the Ministry of Revenue, Ai Tong, took advantage of his position to embezzle taxes from the imperial treasury. What's wrong with me arresting him?" The left servant was shocked. He asked, "Do you have evidence?" Zhang Chun said, "The evidence is conclusive." The left servant said, "Minister of Imperial Treasury, Wu Shang." Zhang Chun said, "Minister of Imperial Treasury, Wu Shang, used his power to threaten and sleep with young girls. The youngest of those girls was only 8 years old. Shouldn't he be arrested?" The left servant moved his lips and said, "Then the Minister of Imperial Treasury, Chen Guang," Zhang Chun continued. "The Minister of Imperial Treasury, Chen Guang, allowed his younger brother to commit crimes and invade private residences. He bribed the Ministry of Justice to get his younger brother released and exonerated, breaking the law. What's wrong with me arresting him?" He looked at the left servant and said loudly, "There's also Wei Chong from the Taichung Temple, Wang Ning from the Taichung Temple, and Zhuo Xian from the Ceremonies Department. As officials of the Great Zhou, these people acted as a protective umbrella for criminals who trafficked women and children. Shouldn't they be arrested?" He listed the crimes of these more than 20 people one by one. The officials in the court were shocked. They had never heard of such things before. Since Zhang Chun dared to arrest them, then the Imperial Clan Temple might really have evidence of the crimes of so many officials. But how did they find out about these hidden things? Among the officials, some of them realized something. They lowered their heads and squeezed out 2 words from between their teeth. Zhou Zhong. Chapter 380. In the Imperial Kitchen. Ever since Lu Hanyan and Li Qing opened their hearts to each other, Li Mu didn't want to go home. He didn't want to leave home. Of course, because of this, he came to the palace less often, and he hadn't been to the Imperial Kitchen for a long time. When it was only Lu Hanyan and the Empress, Li Mu could still take care of them. But when Lu Hanyan came to Shandu and Li Qing moved in, the number of people who needed to be with him increased from 1 to 3. Li Mu was a little busy. This made him realize that he still had a lot of shortcomings in terms of time management. Mr. Lu Sun once said that time was like water in a sponge. If he could make use of the time he spent standing in a daze in the morning court, he could at least cook a bowl of piping hot noodles for the Empress after the morning court. Mr. Mei once mentioned by accident that the Empress liked to sleep in, so she often didn't eat breakfast in the morning. After the court, it was still early before breakfast time, so she might as well eat something to fill her stomach. Li Mu knew why the Empress liked to sleep in. It was because she couldn't fall asleep at night, so she would cook conch porridge with Li Mu in the middle of the night, or enter his dreams to teach him how to cultivate. As a cultivator in the upper 3 realms, she wouldn't feel tired even if she didn't sleep for a month. But cultivators were still people, and nothing could replace the joy and happiness brought by sleeping. Of course, that was in the past. At that time, Li Mu and she were both single. Now, Li Mu had his wife in his arms every night. Unlike the empress, who had nothing to do during the long nights, he couldn't sleep beside Lu Hanyan and talk to another woman all night, even if that woman was Lu Hanyan's idol. While he was cooking the noodles, several imperial chefs were watching. Finally, one of them couldn't help but ask, "Lord Li, is there some secret to your cooking? Why can't we use the same ingredients and the same steps to make your dish taste the same?" Regarding this point, Li Mu also did not know. With the same ingredients and steps, the food made by these imperial chefs would definitely be better than his. Perhaps the empress was used to eating the food and liked his taste. After cooking the noodles, Li Mu calculated the time and arrived at Changle Palace just as the morning court session was about to end. Soon, a figure walked out from the back of the hall. Zhou Yi looked at Li Mu and said, "Is it because I spoil you too much that you are becoming more and more unruly? You even dare to sneak out of the morning court." What's that smell?" Her throat moved, and her tone instantly softened as she asked, "Did you cook noodles?" Li Mu said, "I guess that your majesty probably didn't eat breakfast today, so I went to the imperial kitchen to cook a bowl of noodles." Zhou Yi slowly sat down, thought for a moment, and said, "You are the deputy commander of the bamboo guards and also responsible for internal affairs. If there is an emergency in the morning court session, you can leave first. I won't blame you. Okay, give me the chopsticks." Watching the empress eat the noodles in small bites, Li Mu asked, "Your Majesty, how is the situation in the court?" Zhou Yi slowly finished a mouthful of noodles, and then said, "You don't know what the result of the trouble you caused will be. The court officials are all in danger, and the court is in chaos. The trouble was caused by you, so you are responsible for pacifying it." Li Mu said, "These more than 20 guilty officials deserve to be punished. Although it will cause chaos for a short period of time, as long as it's properly arranged, it won't affect the court too much. Your Majesty, you can quickly promote some experienced officials without any background to replace their original positions in the departments of those guilty officials. This way, the impact can be minimized and the normal operation of the Yamen can be maintained. At the same time, Your Majesty can also publicize the crimes of these officials, and use this to win over the people. After Lord Li Yi overturned the case, the people of the 36 counties will greatly increase. After punishing these corrupt officials, Your Majesty's reputation will reach the peak, and you will not be inferior to the previous wise emperors of Great Zhou. It will only be a matter of time before you surpass Emperor Wen." Zhou Qiong didn't seem to be interested in Li Mu's pancake at all. Her mind was completely focused on the bowl of noodles in front of her. She was puzzled. The same noodles and the same side dishes. Why was it that the imperial chef's dish didn't taste as good as Li Mu's? She waved her hand and said, "Just do as you said. Go and arrange it." Walking out of Changle Palace, Li Mu's heart was slightly heavy. He was a little worried. If the empress favored him so much and let him make all the decisions, the court officials might be jealous and label him as a favored official who caused chaos. They might band together and get rid of him. No, he had to go back and fix the law bell as soon as possible. If the worst happened, the safety of his family would be guaranteed. When the time came, as long as the law bell covered the Li residence, there would be time to slowly shake people off. Li Mu returned to the secretariat. Lu Yi was about to leave the assistant minister's office, but when she looked up and saw him, she subconsciously retracted her foot. At the same time, in the Zongjing temple not far from the secretariat, Zhang Chun looked at Prince Shou and said, "Prince, without your seal, it won't be easy for me to catch people." Prince Shou shook his head and said, "If I give you my seal and let you catch our people, wouldn't I be in a difficult position?" Zhang Chun said, "According to the law, Gao Hong should be arrested." Prince Shou shook his head and said, "Whoever wants to arrest him can do it. In any case, I'm not arresting him." Zhang Chun gritted his teeth and said, "Then you are bending the law for personal gain. The next time I go to the imperial court, I will report you in the Golden Palace. As an official of the Zongjing Temple, you are bending the law for personal gain and shielding your accomplices. Your crime is not light." Prince Shou said angrily, "Are you threatening me?" Zhang Chun said indifferently, "This is persuasion." Prince Shou suddenly sighed and said, "You are threatening me with impeachment. If I arrest Gao Hong, they can't blame me. Show me the official document and my seal." Not long after, Zhang Chun brought people out of the Zongjing Temple and came to the southern courtyard, in front of the Gao residence. The morning court had already ended, and Gao Hong had already received news that Zhang Chun was not targeting him. Last night, more than 20 officials in the imperial court were arrested by the Zongjing temple. Without exception, these 20 people were all officials of the old party. Gao Hong found it hard to believe that the Zongjing temple had something on all of them. Even the Empress's internal guards did not have this ability. There was no doubt that there was a traitor among them. As for who the traitor was, it couldn't be any more obvious. Gao Hong gritted his teeth and said, "Zhou Zhong, you should be hacked into pieces." As the assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice, Zhou Zhong had gained their trust over the years. The Ministry of Justice had also become a shelter for the old party officials. No matter what crimes they committed, they could be cleared of any crimes through the Ministry of Justice. Zhou Zhong had helped the old party officials time and time again, and his status in the old party had also risen. At the same time, Zhou Zhong also had many things on them. Facts had proven that the more they valued someone, the deeper they were hurt. In just a month, Zhou Zhong had betrayed them twice. Previously, when he turned himself in and overturned Li Yi's case, he had already caused the old party to lose an arm. This time, although the officials he targeted were not high-ranking, the scope was huge. The old party would probably suffer another blow. However, this was not necessarily a bad thing. After this, the higher-ups would probably not tolerate Li Mu anymore. Even if it went against the emperor's will, they would resolutely get rid of him. Before that, he just needed to wait for news. Gao Hong did not receive any news, but Zhang Chun did. Looking at the official seal of the Imperial Clan Temple, Gao Hong said in disbelief, "You stole His Highness's seal." "Bullshit." Zhang Chun glared at him and said, "Do I need to steal it? I just need to tell him that you, Gao Hong, are guilty." If he didn't seal it, he would be bending the law for favoritism and covering up for his accomplice. I will have the imperial court impeach him, and he will confess everything. Gao Hong's lungs were about to explode. He gritted his teeth and said, "Coward." Zhang Chun waved his hand and said, "If you want to scold him, go to the Imperial Clan Temple and scold him in front of him. Lord Gao, do you want to leave by yourself, or do we have to escort you?" Gao Hong snorted and said, "I'll leave by myself." He looked coldly at Zhang Chun and said, "Just you wait. Li Mu won't be able to jump around for long. When the time comes, the first one to die will be you." Zhang Chun glanced at him and said, "You might not be able to wait until that day." After having two people send Gao Hong to the Imperial Clan Temple, Zhang Chun waved his hand and said to the others, "Go to the next house." A moment later, at the Commandery Prince Mansion of Nanyang, the people of the Imperial Clan Temple knocked on the door for a long time, but no one answered. A low-ranking official helplessly retreated and said, "Lord, there's no one." Zhang Chun said indifferently, "Put on the explosive talisman." The two low-ranking officials stuck a few pieces of fu lu on the door of the Commandery Prince Mansion of Nanyang. Zhang Chun used his magic power to control the fu lu from a distance, and a powerful wave of spiritual energy erupted from the pieces of paper. However, as soon as the wave of spiritual energy was produced, a wave of water appeared on the door of the Commandery Prince Mansion of Nanyang. Wherever the wave of water passed, the waves of spiritual energy produced by the fu lu were easily wiped out. A low-ranking official said, "The protective formation." He walked to Zhang Chun and said, "Lord, the protective formation here is too strong. We can't break it." Zhang Chun asked, "How did the Imperial Clan Temple solve this kind of problem in the past?" The low-ranking official said, "We would send an official document to the Ministry of Personnel and ask them to send a high priest from the High Priest Department." Zhang Chun thought for a while and said, "Let's go back to the Imperial Clan Temple first. I'll write an official document for you to send to the Ministry of Personnel." The low-ranking official looked at him and reminded, "Lord, you're the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Personnel." Zhang Chun slapped his head and said, "How could I forget about this? Come, follow me to the Ministry of Personnel." Soon, there was no movement outside the Commandery Prince Mansion of Nanyang. Outside the door, the Commandery Prince of Nanyang waved his sleeves and snorted, "You're courting death." Without this incident, perhaps the higher-ups would continue to tolerate Li Mu. After this incident, getting rid of Li Mu was a top priority. At the same time, in a deep house in the southern court, there was a sound of gnashing teeth. Li Mu can't be kept alive anymore. This person's threat is even greater than Li Yi's back then. We must get rid of Li Mu, but His Majesty. With His Majesty's protection, it's impossible to get rid of him through the imperial court. If we want to get rid of Li Mu, we must restrain His Majesty and use special means. I'll go to the 100 Rivers Academy and meet the Dean. I'll go to the Myriad Scrolls Academy. Chapter 381. The 4 major academies had always held a special position in the Great Zhou. Although they did not directly participate in the politics of the imperial court, the academy presidents could restrict the emperor in the name of righteousness. Back when the former emperor was still on the throne, it was because of his arbitrary actions that the Great Zhou was plagued with internal and external troubles. The atmosphere was foul, and the faith of the people fell to the lowest point in the past century. At that time, the 4 major academies worked together. 4 seventh realm powerhouses suppressed the imperial court in an unparalleled manner, and completely took away the former emperor's authority. Now, the empress's special favor for Li Mu had repeatedly caused unrest in the imperial court. The 4 major academies had enough reasons to restrict the empress and stabilize the imperial court. If Li Mu had obediently been her favored official, it would have been fine. The old party would not take the risk of offending the empress and attack him just because she doted on him. However, his existence had already greatly damaged their vitality and strength. If this continued, even if the old party did not perish at the hands of the Zhou clan, they would perish at the hands of Li Mu. Li Mu must be eliminated. For this, they did not hesitate to force the emperor to abdicate. 100 Rivers Academy. A middle-aged man in luxurious clothes looked at Vice Academy President Chen and said, "I want to see the Academy President." Vice Academy President Chen asked, "The Academy President is currently in seclusion. What is the matter, Your Highness King Ping?" King Ping said solemnly, "This is a matter of great importance. The Academy President must come out of seclusion." Vice Academy President Chen said, "What exactly is the matter? Can you tell me first?" King Ping said in a deep voice, "The favored official Li Mu has bewitched the emperor and caused chaos in the imperial court. His Majesty has been bewitched by him and indulged him in every possible way, allowing him to wreak havoc in the imperial court. If this continues, the consequences will be unimaginable. I would like to ask the Academy Presidents to persuade His Majesty to punish the demonic official Li Mu and return peace to the imperial court." Vice Academy President Chen glanced at him and shook his head. However, what the Academy sees is not so. Li Mu is called Qing Tian by the people of Fairy's capital and is extremely loved by the people. Outside, he single-handedly dealt a heavy blow to the 10 demonic sections. Internally, he overturned the case of the favored official who was wrongly killed more than 10 years ago and punished the lawless officials in the imperial court. Because of what he has done, the people's faith in the Great Zhou has reached its peak in 50 years, far surpassing the time of the emperor. It is inevitable that His Majesty's favor. Although he is a favored official, Your Highness. King Ping opened his mouth and said, There is one thing that I hope Your Highness can understand." Vice Academy President Chen looked at King Ping and said slowly, "The Academy is the Academy of the Great Zhou, not the Academy of the Xiao clan. If the Emperor is muddle-headed, the Academy should work together to support him. This is our duty. If the Emperor is wise, the Academy should do its best to assist him. This is also our duty. Whether His Majesty is wise or muddle-headed, it is not up to you to decide." "It is up to the people to decide," King Ping said, "but the Imperial Court," Vice Academy President Chen said, "without destruction, there can be no construction. A piece of good wood will not go bad just because a few worms have crawled on it. However, if they are allowed to gnaw on it, the good wood will eventually turn rotten one day. This is all I have to say. Take care of yourselves." With that, he put his hands behind his back and slowly left. King Ping stood where he was and his expression changed for a while. Finally, he revealed a helpless expression. After a while, he left the 100 Rivers Academy and returned to King Ping's residence. Several people who were waiting in the residence immediately came up to him and spoke. "How was it? What did the dean say? Brother Wang say something?" King Ping looked at everyone and sighed. "Let's drop this matter. Don't mention it again." "Why? Could it be that the Academy doesn't agree?" While everyone was asking, another figure walked in from outside. The Duke of Jiangyin had just walked into the courtyard when he shook his head and said, "I didn't see the dean. I don't think we can count on the 1,000 Scrolls Academy. Among the 4 great academies, The White Deer Academy belonged to the Ministry of War and could never be counted on. As for the other three great academies, the 100 Rivers Academy and the 1,000 Scrolls Academy supported the Xiao clan. The Azure Cloud Academy stood on the side of the Zhou clan. If even the 100 Rivers Academy and the 1,000 Scrolls Academy could not be won over, then there was no need to mention the Azure Cloud Academy. At least 3 deans were needed to persuade the Empress. Even if they managed to win over the Azure Cloud Academy, it would be useless. One of them looked at the Duke of Jiangyin and asked, "What did the 1,000 Scrolls Academy say?" The Duke of Jiangyin shook his head and said, "They said that the Academy is not a tool for us to fight for power. They only want to ensure the continuation of the Xiao clan's royal family. If the Empress wants to pass the throne to a disciple of the Zhou clan, they will do their best to stop it. Apart from that, the Academy will not participate in any court battles." After saying that, he looked at King Ping and asked, "What did the 100 Rivers Academy say?" King Ping said, "They told us to take care of ourselves." No one spoke again. The courtyard fell into a long silence. The meaning of "take care of ourselves" was that the 100 Rivers Academy would not help them this time. All along, they had thought that the Zhou clan only had one advantage over the Xiao clan, and that was that the Empress's surname was Zhou. Regardless of whether it was the control of the imperial court, the local area, or the number of academies behind them, they were stronger than the Zhou clan's new faction. In fact, if it was not for the former emperor's incompetence that caused the wrath of the people and made the Azure Cloud Academy's dean extremely disappointed in the Xiao clan, there might be 3 or even 4 academies behind the Xiao clan. It was only now that they realized that although the 2 academies behind them were inclined to let the Xiao clan return to the orthodox lineage in the future, that was a matter for the future. At present, they still acknowledged the Empress. In fact, it was not just the academies. Even everyone present was convinced by the current Empress. She had shown great talent in cultivation since she was young. Otherwise, she would not have been valued by the former emperor and become the crown princess and empress. The fact that she could be acknowledged by the emperor's qi and successfully advance to the 7th realm proved this point. At that time, no one in the Xiao clan could withstand the emperor's qi and forcefully break through. The royal clan would not have an additional 7th realm powerhouse, but a useless person whose foundation was destroyed. One had to know that she was only 25 years old back then. Since ancient times, no one in the Xiao clan had been able to inherit the emperor's qi and advance to the 7th realm at the age of 25. Obviously, the academies would not stand against the empress for this matter. The Duke of Jiangyin asked, "What do we do now?" After a long silence, King Ping shook his head and said tiredly, "Let's leave it at that." Although he did not say much, everyone could hear the intention to retreat from his words. The Xiao royal clan did not retreat when facing the new faction that was at the peak of their power. Now that they were facing a lone official, they had the intention to retreat. After failing to defeat Li Mu after using countless methods openly and secretly, they chose to avoid him. The Li residence. Li Mu had just learned from Zhang Chun that the Duke of Nanyang's residence was covered by a powerful formation, and the officials of the ancestral temple could not enter. As the assistant minister of the Ministry of Personnel, he mobilized the consecrated department to help, but was rejected by the consecrated department. The consecrated department was a special department in the imperial court. It was not an official office. The consecrators in it were powerhouses recruited from all over the country at great cost by the imperial court. Their relationship with the imperial court was a cooperative relationship, not a subordinate one. The consecrated department existed in the previous dynasty, and had always been under the control of the old faction. Ever since someone tried to assassinate Zhou Zhong in the consecrated department, Li Mu decided to find an opportunity to reorganize the department. However, he had been busy with other things these days and delayed this matter. Now, he was almost done with the matters at hand and could start to clean up the consecrated department. Before that, he had to help Zhang Chun solve the current problem. There were not many powerhouses in the ancestral temple. They could not be compared to the consecrated department and could not break the formation of the Duke of Nanyang's residence. Li Mu walked out of the residence and said, "Let's go. I'll go with you to take a look." The Duke of Nanyang's residence. The Duke of Nanyang observed the situation outside the door through a mirror. Several officials of the ancestral temple stood there, but Zhang Chun had disappeared. This time, Li Mu suddenly went crazy and let Zhang Chun capture so many officials of the old faction. This really surprised the Duke of Nanyang. After the surprise, he was delighted. The reason why the higher-ups tolerated Li Mu was that although Li Mu had damaged the interests of the old faction, It was not to the extent that they would completely fall out with the Empress and get rid of Li Mu at all costs. Now it was time. Because Li Mu's actions had shaken the foundation of the old faction in the imperial court. The entire old faction did not hesitate to ask the Academy for help and restrain the Empress in order to get rid of Li Mu, a thorn in their flesh. In the end, Li Mu was killed by his arrogance. What the Duke of Nanyang had to do was wait. He was waiting for the higher-ups to make a move. When Li Mu died, Zhang Chun and the others would be like chickens and pottery dogs, unable to withstand a single blow. While the Duke of Nanyang was waiting, he saw the figures of Zhang Chun and Li Mu appear in the mirror. When he saw Li Mu, a trace of impatience appeared on his face. He gritted his teeth and said, "Why haven't you made a move yet?" Then, he saw Li Mu and Zhang Chun outside, trying all kinds of methods to break the array of the Duke of Nanyang's residence. The Duke of Nanyang sneered. This array was set up by the array masters of the Spirit Array sect. Even a sixth realm expert would have to spend some effort to break it. Li Mu and Zhang Chun were overestimating themselves. Outside the Duke of Nanyang's residence, Li Mu also discovered the extraordinariness of this array. This array could absorb attacks from the outside world and even turn the attacks or the spirit chi in the Fulu into one's own. It was not an ordinary defensive array. It might have been set up by an array master. Although Li Mu had the memories of the Thousand Illusions Venerable Master, he knew that most of those arrays were evil arrays. He did not have a deep understanding of the orthodox arrays. This almost eliminated the possibility of him using ingenuity to break this array. Since he could not use ingenuity, he could only use brute force. Li Mu whistled, and the Dao bell flew out of his ear. In the blink of an eye, it grew to the height of a human. Li Mu pointed at the array outside the Duke of Nanyang's residence and said, "Crash into it." Buzz. The Dao bell responded with a buzz. Then, it flew high into the air and swooped down, crashing heavily into the defensive array. A burst of light flowed on the array. It resisted stubbornly for a few breaths before the light on it quickly dimmed. Zhang Chun strode forward and slammed the door a few times. He shouted, "Xiao Yun, Duke of Nanyang, the Imperial Clan Temple is handling a case. Hurry up and open the door. Don't hide inside. I know you're at home. Hurry up and open the door." Chapter 382. Zhang Chun pounded on the door like he was announcing a funeral, but no one responded. He channeled his mana into his palms and slammed them down. The two doors collapsed inwards, and Xiao Yun, the Duke of Nanyang, appeared in front of him with a gloomy face. Zhang Chun stared at the Duke of Nanyang unhappily and asked, "The Imperial Ancestral Temple has summoned you to close your residence. Are you resisting arrest?" The Duke of Nanyang, the former Minister of Personnel, had fallen to the point where his residence was broken down and humiliated. The Duke of Nanyang could no longer suppress the anger in his heart. He wanted nothing more than to kill Li Mu and Zhang Chun. Thinking that the two of them would not last long, he forcefully used his mana to suppress his anger. He looked at Zhang Chun and said coldly, "Why would the Imperial Ancestral Temple come to my residence for no reason? I thought it was a bold bandit who attacked my residence." Zhang Chun said indifferently, "Whether it is for no reason or not, you will know once you follow me to the Imperial Ancestral Temple." The Duke of Nanyang said, "Do you have the official document from the Imperial Ancestral Temple?" Zhang Chun took out the official document with the seal of the Imperial Ancestral Temple and waved it in front of him. He asked, "Is this enough?" The Duke of Nanyang said calmly, "If that is the case, let's go." Even as a duke, he could not openly resist the Imperial Ancestral Temple, because it was equivalent to resisting the Imperial Court. However, this did not mean that he would submit to Zhang Chun and Li Mu. King Ping and the others had already gone to the academy to discuss with the dean. Eliminating Li Mu was already the top priority of the Xiao clan. Perhaps at this moment, Bai Chuan and the two deans of the Myriad Scroll Academy had already taken action to restrain the Empress. The experts that King Ping and the others had arranged to clean up the Empress and kill Li Mu were already on their way here. Bai Chuan Academy. In the northeast corner of the academy, there was a bamboo forest that was green all year round. The students of Bai Chuan Academy would not easily approach this place. Everyone knew that this was the place where the dean cultivated. The dean of the academy was one of the few experts in the Great Zhou. He was deeply respected and loved by the students, and no one would disturb his cultivation place. In the depths of the bamboo forest, in front of a bamboo house, a hearty laughter could be heard. Beside the stone table in front of the bamboo hut, The man in white put down a word and said with a smile, Zhao Qingsong, I haven't seen you in 2 years. Your chess skills are getting worse. The middle-aged man opposite him waved his hand, and the black and white chess pieces on the chessboard quickly flew up and returned to their respective baskets. He looked at the man in white and said, What is there to show off? I was just careless and distracted. Otherwise, you would have lost 15 minutes ago. The man in white asked, What can distract you? The middle-aged man said, I don't know if this change in the imperial court is good or bad. The man in white thought for a moment and said, You mean that young man named Li Mu? The middle-aged man said, Who else could it be? The man in white nodded and said, Indeed. At such a young age. He has such a natural disposition. He has gathered the faith of the people in Shendu, can communicate with the heavens and earth, and can achieve the Tao with his words. He is also extremely talented in the Fulu Tao, and made the Fulu school bet its future on him. He can be said to be a hero of his generation. What kind of people are the Xiao clan that you support? Why do they have to go against him instead of keeping the Zhou clan in check? The middle-aged man looked at him and said, The Zhou clan that you support is not much better than the Xiao clan. The man in white crossed his arms and said calmly, I just can't stand Xiao Jing's actions. If Emperor Cheng knew that the crown prince he chose was even more muddle-headed than him, and almost caused the great Zhou to be doomed eternally, he might as well smear that essence on the wall. The middle-aged man coughed softly and said, Zhang Xingchui, you are the head of a school after all. You should at least show some respect to the late emperor and Emperor Cheng. The man in white waved his hand and said, Let's not talk about those disappointing things. Li Mu is favored not only because he is handsome. His method of stabilizing the hearts of the people is really useful. In less than a year, the faith of the people in the various counties has surpassed the peak of the reign of Emperor Cheng and the late emperor. If this can continue in the next 10 years, the glory of the reign of Emperor Wen may be reproduced. The middle-aged man seemed to think of something and murmured, Could it be that he is also one of the descendants of the extinct 100 schools? There seem to be many among the 100 schools who cultivate with the faith of the people. He has always been trying to reform the law. Could it be the school of legalism? Establishing a heart for heaven and earth, establishing a life for the people, inheriting the lost knowledge of the past saints, establishing peace for all ages. The man in white whispered a few words and said, It sounds more like the Confucian school. He has the ambition of ruling the world and is full of righteousness. It is very likely that he is a descendant of the Confucian school. The middle-aged man put down a chess piece and rubbed his chin. He said, The Confucian school has always been active in the court and respected etiquette. However, his actions are bold and radical, seeking change. It is not like the Confucian school, but more like the school of legalism. The man in white put down another chess piece and said, Whether it is the Confucian school or the school of legalism, those who can rule the country are righteous. Let him be. The Zongjing Temple. The prison of the Zongjing Temple, which had always been cold and cheerless, was especially lively today. More than 20 court officials were locked together, all frowning. Most of them had been brought from their homes by the people of the Zongjing Temple last night. Some of the officials had their doors blown up by Zhang Chun while they were eating dinner. Some of them had been pulled out of their beds while they were being intimate with their concubines. At first, everyone was panic-stricken, but after arriving at the Zongjing Temple and seeing so many familiar colleagues, they slowly calmed down. When they saw the former Assistant Minister of Personnel Gao Hong and the Duke of Nanyang being arrested, they were even more reassured. Of the two of them, one was a relative of the imperial family and the other was a member of the imperial clan. The higher-ups would definitely not let them stay in the Zongjing Temple. When the time came, they would be able to save them along the way. After calming down, they began to curse the main culprit. This damned Zhou Zhong. I've really misjudged him all these years. He doesn't have many days left and he still wants to drag us down with him. Gao Hong did not curse like the others. He knew very well that Zhou Zhong had been sitting in the position of the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice all these years and had a lot of information on them. He no longer had the golden ticket of exemption from death, and was no longer the Assistant Minister of Personnel. Once those crimes were confirmed, it was enough for him to die several times. In the cell next door, the Duke of Nanyang was meditating with his eyes closed. At a certain moment, he opened his eyes and glanced at Gao Hong. He said indifferently, "Why are you panicking?" Gao Hong strode over and asked, "Duke, are you sure that the higher-ups will make a move on Li Mu?" The Duke of Nanyang said, Li Mu has already forced them into this situation. Do you think they will continue to tolerate it? Gao Hong said uneasily. But it's been so long. Why hasn't there been any movement at all? The Duke of Nanyang said indifferently. What's the hurry? Perhaps they are already on their way. Gao Hong was still worried. He walked out of the cell and said to a jailer, Go and invite His Highness Prince Shou here. Hearing this, the jailer quickly walked out of the prison. Although the prisoners in the cell were all criminals, they still had a higher status than the jailers. As a lowly jailer, he did not dare to disobey these people. After a while, Prince Shou walked in from the outside. He looked at the two of them and said, What's wrong with you? Why are you caught again? Gao Hong said. Isn't it because Zhang Chun took the official document with your highness's seal? Prince Shou frowned and said, Why? Are you blaming me? Zhang Chun threatened me. If I didn't do it, I would be bending the law. He even said that he would impeach me in the Golden Palace. What can I do? All of you didn't clean up after what you did and now blame me. Are you still human? Gao Hong quickly said, That's not what I meant, Prince Shou said angrily. Then what do you mean? The Duke of Nanyang finally opened his mouth and said, Now is not the time to talk about this. We want to ask your highness Prince Shou to go out of the palace and ask about the situation. Why haven't they made a move on Li Mu? Prince Shou glanced at them and said, Wait here. I'll go and ask. Half an hour later, in the southern court, Prince Ping's residence. Prince Shou sipped his tea and looked at Prince Ping. He asked, What about the Duke of Nanyang, Gao Hong and the rest? Should I let them go? Prince Ping stretched out his hand and said, No. Prince Shou was stunned and asked, Then what should I do? Prince Ping took a deep breath and said, According to the law, those who should be demoted will be demoted and those who should be killed will be killed. Prince Shou spat out his tea and wiped his mouth with his sleeve. He asked, Then what about the Duke of Nanyang? Prince Ping shook his head and said, Without the death exemption token, he can't be saved. Prince Shou was stunned and said, Aren't you going to join forces with the academy to make a move on Li Mu? Prince Ping said, Li Mu is not our enemy. The Zhou family is. There's no need to take the risk. Prince Shou said, But that's not right. If Li Mu makes a move, Xiao Yun will die. Prince Ping leaned on the chair and slowly let out a sigh of relief. He said, He asked for it. 36 dukes. Even if one is gone, there are still 35. Smack. Prince Shou stood up abruptly and pointed at Prince Ping. He said angrily, How can you do this? Do you have any humanity left? Those are our beloved friends. Prince Ping also stood up and said coldly, What do you know? We're looking at the big picture. Prince Shou stared at him for a long time and finally sat back down. He leaned weakly on the chair and said, The blood flowing in his body is the same as ours, Prince Ping said. It's because the blood flowing in his body is the blood of the Xiao family. When necessary, he should sacrifice himself for the Xiao family. Ancestral Temple. After 2 hours, Prince Shou reappeared in the heavenly prison. Gao Hong and the Duke of Nanyang were already anxious from waiting. The Duke of Nanyang was still able to maintain his calm while Gao Hong grabbed the bars of the cell and looked in a certain direction. When he finally saw the chubby figure of Prince Shou, he asked anxiously without waiting for Prince Shou to come closer, Your Highness, how is it? Prince Shou patted his shoulder and said, Don't worry, it's fine. Gao Hong let out a long sigh of relief. Then excitement appeared on his face as he asked, When will Li Mu die? Prince Shou let out a sigh of relief and said, When I save you. Gao Hong finally relaxed and sat down slowly. He leaned against the wall and said, I can't wait any longer. Prince Shou was silent for a moment. Suddenly he looked at the two of them and said, Are you hungry? What do you want to eat? I'll get someone to send it in. Chapter 383. The officials who were locked up in the Zongjing Temple lived a life of luxury at home. Naturally, they weren't used to the food of the Zongjing Temple. As the head of the Zongjing Temple, Prince Shou took this into consideration and sent them food from the restaurant outside the palace. In the prison, the officials were eating heartily. This pork shoulder is from the Wafting Fragrance Restaurant. It's definitely from the Wafting Fragrance Restaurant. The smell of the wine can't be wrong. The food of the Zongjing Temple is really hard to swallow. The Wafting Fragrance Restaurant is the best. Thank you, Your Highness Prince Shou. Other than having their freedom restricted, the 20 officials didn't suffer much in the Zongjing Temple. Prince Shou arranged a single cell for each of them and changed the bed sheets. In order to protect their privacy, he even had people separate the cells with curtains. 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. 2 hours in advance, the prison guards would send the menus from the various restaurants in the divine capital. Each of them could order 4 dishes, 1 soup, and a pot of wine. If they were hungry in the middle of the night, they could even order supper. For this, Prince Shou specially invited the chefs of the wafting fragrance restaurant to the Zongjing temple to be on standby. Even if these officials had more needs in the middle of the night, the chefs would have to crawl out of bed to satisfy them. In terms of food, the food these officials usually ate at home wasn't as good as the food in the Zongjing temple. Not only that, Prince Shou even considered their physical needs and used his sedan to secretly bring the girls from the brothels outside the palace into the Zongjing temple to comfort these officials at night. This made the officials in the prison change their impression of Prince Shou. Other than his stupidity and cowardice, Prince Shou still had his shining points. Despite the risk of being impeached by the censor, he still took care of these criminal officials meticulously. This wasn't something that anyone could do. It was really good to have one of their own in the Zongjing temple. In the courtyard of the Zongjing temple, Zhang Chun watched as the prison guard sent the food made by the wafting fragrance restaurant's chefs into the prison. He looked at Prince Shou and said slowly, "Your Highness, isn't this a little too much?" "Too much?" King Shou glanced at him and said, "How is this going overboard? When you took special care of Li Yi's daughter, did I say anything overboard? Why are you like this?" Zhang Chun was stunned. "I just covered her cell with a curtain and changed her bed." King Shou said, "I also covered up their cells and changed their beds." Zhang Chun looked at the busy figures in the kitchen of the Zongjing temple and said, "But you brought the chef of the restaurant into the palace. Isn't that too much?" King Shou said, "Is this too much? This is not too much at all. Let me tell you what is too much. Li Mu used His Majesty's imperial kitchen to cook for other women. This is what is too much." Zhang Chun was stunned and said, "But you can't let them drink. The imperial ancestral temple strictly forbids prisoners from drinking." After that, he waved his hand and said, "Let's not talk about the wine you gave to those guilty officials. You even found women for them. What do you think the Zongjing temple is? A restaurant or a brothel?" King Shou glanced at him and said, "Ordinary prisoners have to eat a full meal before they are executed. Are you in charge of the Zongjing temple or am I?" Zhang Chun said angrily, "You." Then he seemed to realize something and looked at King Shou in shock. King Shou sighed and shook his head. Zhang Chun silently shut his mouth. After thinking for a while he said, "Even if you want to find women from the brothel, your Highness' taste is too unique. You don't let them enjoy, but let them suffer. I know of a brothel in Luoyang. The women there are very beautiful." King Shou said indignantly, "What's wrong with my taste? They are fat and chubby. Aren't they good?" In the prison, 2 officials had just finished their sweet and sour fish. As they picked their teeth with the fish bones, they complained, "Everything about His Highness King Shou is good, but I really can't agree with him when it comes to women. I can't even bear to touch the women he finds." King Shou walked in and said, "If you're not satisfied, I'll give you a beautiful one tonight." The official smiled and said, "Thank you, Your Highness." King Shou walked to the innermost cell and asked Commandery Prince Nanyang, "Are you used to it?" Commandery Prince Nanyang said, "Not really, but thank you for taking care of me." At first, Commandery Prince Nanyang looked down on King Shou. Although King Shou was one of the 7 one-word princes and his status was much higher than his, everyone in Luoyang knew about King Shou's cowardice and incompetence. Now, although his evaluation of King Shou's cowardice and incompetence did not change, he did not hate him as much. King Shou squatted at the door of the cell and said, "Nanyang County is such a good place. Why did you come to Luoyang in the first place?" Commandery Prince Nanyang smiled and said, "Nanyang is good in every way except for one thing. It's not Luoyang." King Shou murmured, "Luoyang, what's so good about Luoyang?" Commandery Prince Nanyang said, "Power, wealth, women, cultivation resources. Luoyang has everything you want. It's thousands of times better than Nanyang County." King Shou sighed and said, "Although Luoyang is good, it's also dirty." Commandery Prince Nanyang did not hear what King Shou said clearly and asked, "Brother, when will you let us out?" King Shou said, "You know what you've done. If I let you go just like that, I won't be able to answer to the people and the imperial court. Instead, the new party will have something to use against you. Therefore, we still have to put on a show. Commandery Prince Nanyang asked, "How do we put on a show?" King Shou said slowly, "You'll still be sentenced to death. Then, you'll be sent outside to be executed. Of course, this is all an act. The executioner's knife won't really cut you down. The dean will use his great power to create an illusion to make the people think that you're really dead. After that, you'll have to appear in Luoyang with a new identity." Commandery Prince Nanyang frowned and said, "So troublesome." King Shou said helplessly, "Do you think what you've done is a small matter? According to the crimes that Zhou Zhong has confessed, each and every one of you will be beheaded. This is the only way to save your lives. From today onwards, Commandery Prince Nanyang is dead. You'll have a new identity. At that time, we'll find a way to let you enter the imperial court again. After that, you'll get back everything you've lost." Commandery Prince Nanyang had a thoughtful expression as he carefully considered King Shou's words. Indeed, since Li Yi's case was overturned, Commandery Prince Xiao Yun was no different from a dead man in the Great Zhou. His official position was revoked and he would never be employed by the imperial court again. Instead of using the useless identity of Commandery Prince Nanyang, he might as well change his appearance and start a new life. If King Shou really let him go so easily, Commandery Prince Nanyang would be suspicious. Li Mu and the Zhou clan were watching. If he let them go, King Shou wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. However, his plan was so meticulous that it wasn't possible for him to be deceived. It was most likely a decision made by the higher-ups. At this moment, King Shou continued, "I need all of you to act out this scene. Don't mess it up. Otherwise, all your previous efforts will be wasted and no one will be able to save you." Commandery Prince Nanyang no longer had any doubts. He nodded and said, "I understand." King Shou patted him on the shoulder and said, "Remember, even if a knife is placed on your neck, you must remain calm. This is because the executioners this time are all our people. All right, remember to tell the others. Otherwise, if they mess it up, everyone will be implicated and Li Mu won't be able to get rid of them." Commandery Prince Nanyang said, "Don't worry. If anyone dares to mess it up, I'll take their life." In the court of the Zongjing Temple, Zhang Chun looked at the few guilty officials kneeling before him. He picked up a document and read it aloud, "Minister Councillor Ai Tong of the Ministry of Revenue. During his reign, he coveted a huge amount of tax from the national treasury. According to the law of the Great Zhou, he is sentenced to death by beheading. Minister Wu Shang of Guanglu Temple. According to the law of the Great Zhou, he is sentenced to death by beheading. Wei Chong, Wang Ning, and Zhuo Xian. As officials of the Great Zhou, they participated in the trafficking of women and children and acted as a shield for evil forces. They are sentenced to death by beheading. Minister Chen Guang. They are sentenced to death by beheading." When Zhang Chun announced the sentence, there was no fear on the faces of the officials in the court. Some of them even looked at each other and laughed. It wasn't that they weren't afraid of death. It was just that King Shou had already made it clear to them that this was just an act. When the time came, not only would they not die, but they would also usher in a more glorious life with a new identity. The death penalty documents of these officials had already been reviewed multiple times. After Zhang Chun announced the sentence in the court, more than 20 people were escorted to the execution ground. King Shou stood outside the Zongjing Temple and nodded at all the guilty officials who walked out of the temple. After receiving the hint from King Shou, everyone felt more at ease. They rushed to the execution ground without any fear, looking quite resolute. On the execution ground, screens surrounded the execution ground. The people below the execution ground couldn't see the specific situation on the execution ground. This time, those who were to be executed were all officials of the imperial court. There were even relatives of the emperor. The scene of their execution couldn't be seen by the people. Li Mu held Li Qing's hand and stood in the crowd. The main culprits and accomplices who framed her father back then were almost all here. Li Mu promised her that all the culprits of the case back then would receive the punishment they deserved. Behind the screens, more than 20 people knelt there. There was still no fear on their faces. Some of them even looked back at the executioner with a smile. Even though the executioner was used to big scenes, he still felt goosebumps from the strange gazes of these people who were about to die. Zhang Chun sat at the executioner's seat. He looked up at the sky, grabbed a bunch of sticks, and threw them out. He said, "The time is up. Start the execution." The executioner's knife was raised high and quickly brought down. Looking at the heads rolling next to him, One of the officials sighed in his heart. A seventh realm cultivator was indeed a seventh realm cultivator. This kind of realistic illusion almost fooled him, let alone the people. There were also a few people whose expressions changed when they noticed the blood of the people next to them splattering on them. However, the executioner behind them didn't give them time to think. With a slash of the knife, the heads were separated from the bodies and their souls scattered. Before and after the execution ground was completely silent. In the past, before the execution, the prisoners would cry and howl. This was probably the quietest execution that the people of the fairies' capital had ever seen. King Shou stood outside the execution ground and sighed deeply. He muttered, "In your next life, be a good person." Chapter 384. The execution was very strange. Even the people outside the execution ground could tell that something was wrong. They had seen executions in the past. It was normal for the prisoners to cry and scream before they died. There were also many who yelled and cursed. However, this time, there were no cries and no cursing. The execution platform surrounded by screens was silent. More than 20 people were calmly going to their deaths. It was so quiet that it was eerie. Soon, the cheers of the people drowned out the silence. Good execution. They are all criminals who wronged Lord Li back then. These people deserve to die. Lord Li can rest in peace now. At the front of the crowd, Li Qing held Li Mu's hand tightly and said, "Let's go." The two of them turned around. The people took the initiative to open a path for them. They walked slowly. The people behind them watched them leave. They clasped their fists and said, "I wish Lord Li and Miss Li a long and happy life together. Grow old together. May you have a child." More than 20 guilty officials were beheaded, and the people all clapped their hands in joy. These people were not only accomplices in framing Lord Li, but they themselves were also guilty of many crimes. Their death was a good thing for the country and the people. After the execution, some of the commoners even spat on the execution platform as they left, their faces filled with joy. King Shou sighed and said to a servant beside him, "Don't remove the screens yet. Inform their families to come and collect the bodies." The servant nodded and said, "Yes." King Shou put his hands behind his back and shook his head as he walked away. He said softly, "It's good that they're dead. There's no more trouble after they die." Zhang Chun walked behind him and said, "These people have committed countless crimes. It's too easy for them to die like this." Although these criminals were dead, they still thought that it was a trap. After today, they would reappear in the divine capital with a new identity. Although they died in the end, at least they didn't feel fear or pain before they died. King Shou said casually, "In life, there are some things that shouldn't be taken too seriously. It's fine if it's not too bad." The news that more than 20 officials from the old party, including Commandery Prince Nanyang and the elder brother of the concubine dowager, had been beheaded at the street corner quickly swept through Luoyang and shocked countless people. Are they really dead? No one saved them? The Shao clan hasn't done anything. Are they just going to be abandoned like that? What are they afraid of, and what are they afraid of? You still don't understand. They're obviously afraid of Li Mu. At the Zhou family's banquet, Zhou Chuan's face was pale. Chen Jian was dead, Gao Hong was dead, and the Duke of Nanyang, Xiao Yun was dead. Of the 7 main culprits back then, only he, the Duke of Zhongyong, and the Duke of Peace and Peace were left. Li Mu didn't even spare the accomplices, so how could he spare the main culprits? In particular, the death of the Duke of Nanyang had made him even more terrified. Even the Xiao royal family could not escape Li Mu's punishment, let alone him. Zhou Chen lowered his head to eat, but his forehead was full of cold sweat. He knew what his father was worried about. The Duke of Nanyang and those people were dead. Perhaps his father would be his next target. More than half a year ago, Li Mu was still a small official in a remote county. Unexpectedly, in just half a year, he had grown into an existence that even the old party did not dare to provoke. The Xiao royal family was not as fearful of the Zhou family as they were of Li Mu. Just before he came to Luoyang, Zhou Chen had tried to send an assassin to finish him off, but it had ended in failure. If Li Mu knew that he was the one who sent that assassin, wouldn't he be reduced to the same fate as those people this morning? In the Zhou family, while Zhou Chuan and his son were in shock, Li Mu was also hesitating in the Li residence. Until today, most of the people involved in the case back then had received the punishment they deserved. No accomplices had escaped, and there were still 4 main culprits in Luoyang. These 4 people were the Marquis of Zhongyong, the Earl of Ping En, the Marquis of Yongding, and Zhou Chuan of the Zhou family. The first 3 bigwigs of Luoyang were involved in Zhou Zhong's scheme. They had no enmity with Li Yi. Zhou Zhong knew that he could not change the overall situation, so he deliberately lured them into the trap in order to get the 3 death exemption tokens in their hands. Before Zhou Zhong lured them in, Li Yi's fate was already sealed. These 3 people were just Zhou Zhong's pawns. Although they had bad records, there was no need to kill them. As for Zhou Chuan, although Li Mu wanted him to pay the price, there were 2 problems in front of him. First, the booklet that Zhou Zhong gave him contained evidence of the crimes of the old party officials. There was nothing about Zhou Chuan, so Li Mu could not overthrow him through the law. Second, Zhou Chuan was the Empress's uncle. Li Mu had already killed one of her younger brothers. He did not know how the Empress would feel if he killed another of her uncles. Even though she had left the Zhou family, the blood that flowed in her body was the same as the blood of the Zhou family. The Empress cared about him so much, so Li Mu could not ignore her feelings at all. He pondered for a long time and walked into the courtyard. He said to Lu Hanyan and Li Qing, "I'm going to the palace. You don't have to wait for me to eat today." After informing them, Li Mu left the Li residence and went to the palace. He first went to the imperial kitchen and made a few dishes that the Empress liked. Then, he took the food box and went to Changle Palace. In Changle Palace, Zhou Yi looked at the unusually sumptuous meal on the table. Finally, he looked at Li Mu and said, "What's the matter? Speak." Li Mu shook his head and said, "Nothing." Zhou Yi picked up his chopsticks and said, "I'll only give you 1 chance." Li Mu said, "Among the people who killed Lord Li Yi, the former Minister of Works, Zhou Chuan, was also an important mastermind." Zhou Yi was silent for a long time. Then he said lightly, "If you have evidence of his crimes, you can punish him according to the law. I will not protect him just because he is my uncle. If one day, the one who breaks the law is you, I will not protect you." Li Mu cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, Your Majesty." He walked out of Changle Palace and sighed in relief. Zhou Chuan was different from the others. No matter what, Li Mu could not go around the Empress and make a move on him. So, he needed to ask the Empress's opinion first. After getting the Empress's approval, there was only one problem left to solve. That was how to collect evidence of Zhou Chuan's crimes. The new party had only been established for 3 years. Moreover, the officials of the 2 parties were very different. The old party consisted mostly of influential officials, while the new party consisted mostly of new officials. In comparison, the influential officials had more misdeeds. Collecting evidence of the old party officials' crimes was easier than collecting evidence of the new party's crimes. Moreover, compared to the old party, the new party had stronger restrictions on the officials. This was also one of the reasons why Zhou Zhong had not been able to collect evidence of Zhou Chuan's crimes for so many years. Li Mu did not think that Zhou Zhong would be able to do something that Zhou Zhong had not been able to do for so many years. He walked out of the palace gates and stood outside for 15 minutes. Then, he walked toward the northern courtyard. This time, he did not go home. Instead, he stopped in front of another tall gate. Li Mu walked up and knocked on the door knocker. Soon, the gate opened a crack. A servant poked his head out and asked, "May I ask who your excellency is and why you have come to Zhou Mansion?" Li Mu looked at Zhou Mansion's gatekeeper and said indifferently, "Please go in and inform them that Censor Li Mu of the Secretariat has come to visit." A moment later, Zhou Chuan frowned and anxiously paced around the hall. He muttered, "Li Mu, what is he doing here? I won't see him. Let him go back." Zhou Xiong stretched out his hand and said, "No, if word gets out, outsiders will think that our Zhou family is afraid of Li Mu. Let him in." Zhou Chuan said, "Second brother, but it's fine. Let's see what he wants first." Zhou Xiong waved his hand and said, "His target might be you. Third brother, you should leave for now." After Zhou Chuan left, Zhou Ting said, "I'll leave as well." His only son had died at the hands of Li Mu. He could not face Li Mu calmly. A moment later, under the guidance of a servant, Li Mu passed through 2 doors, walked through several corridors, and arrived at a hall. Zhou Xiong was the only one in the hall. Li Mu walked into the hall. Zhou Xiong said indifferently, "Lord Li, please take a seat." "There's no need for that," Li Mu shook his head and said, "I'm here today to tell you one thing." Zhou Xiong picked up his teacup and asked, "What is it?" Li Mu said, "Zhou Chuan of the Zhou family was one of the main culprits who framed my father-in-law." Zhou Xiong said in a deep voice, "That case is over." Li Mu said, "That's what Duke Nanyang and Gao Hong thought too." Duke Nanyang and Gao Hong had just been executed. This was a blatant threat. Zhou Xiong slammed his teacup on the table and said loudly, "Li Mu, what are you trying to say?" Li Mu said indifferently, "Let Zhou Chuan ask to be exiled and this matter will end here." Zhou Xiong was stunned for a moment before he became furious. He stood up and gritted his teeth. "You're dreaming." Li Mu shook his head and said, "If it weren't for His Majesty, I would do it myself. At that time, it won't be as simple as being exiled. Don't force me." Zhou Xiong wanted to throw his teacup at Li Mu's face. He came to the Zhou family and asked the Zhou family to ask to be exiled. Who was the one forcing who? Zhou Xiong said angrily, "What right do you have to say that?" Li Mu looked at him and said, "When I was in the northern county, I was assassinated. Don't think that I don't know that the mastermind behind the assassination was Zhou Chuan's son, Zhou Chen." Crash! Zhou Chen, who was eavesdropping in the back hall, was shocked when he heard Li Mu's words. He couldn't help but take a few steps back and knocked over a chair. He picked up the chair with a pale face and his body trembled slightly. In the front hall, Zhou Xiong said flatly, "You're slandering me." Li Mu smiled and said, "Whether it's slander or not, you'll know when you get to the Imperial Clan Temple. I still have a lot of evidence of your Zhou family's crimes. At that time, it won't just be Zhou Chen's case. Zhou Chuan, Zhou Ting, and the other officials of your new party won't be able to escape. The fate of those officials on the execution ground today will be your fate." Zhou Xiong's face turned red. He pointed at him and said angrily, You. Li Mu looked at Zhou Xiong and said calmly, "Chen Jian's grave is already covered in grass. Gao Hong and Prince Nanyang's bodies have just turned cold. I only asked Zhou Chuan to be exiled because of His Majesty. I have no interest in the fight between the old and new parties. However, if I don't punish Zhou Chuan and avenge my father-in-law, I won't be able to answer to my wife. Zhou Chuan's request to be exiled is my limit. I'll give you 3 days to think about it."